Good morning, Cartoonist, Kayfabe, King Kayfabers. Welcome to another early morning edition. Remember when we started doing this, Ed, and we would shoot at like all kinds of weird times?
Well, like
I remember shooting at night.
Yeah, I was. COVID made me a day walker.
Yeah. Remember shooting one time. I can't remember the circumstance. I think I dropped Natalie off at the airport. This was like a middle of a night one.
Yeah.
And then recorded like from like 2 in the morning. It's just stupid. Really dumb hours. We've been on this Thursday schedule for a couple years now.
Pretty much from the start.
Yeah, I can't even imagine going back to those early episodes, like the chronology of what we were doing. So much unknown.
Yeah. Like sometimes a piece will pop up, man, and the flow is good from the start, but we definitely learned a lot of things.
It's fun whenever it zigzags into a different direction, like when we start interviewing people, when we start doing the overheads. Those have been fun moments.
Yeah.
Going daily with the lockdown, that was a big move.
I think that was a genius move. I think that was very smart.
Persistence. You could call that one. Gonna have some fun videos today. You know, one thing I would say to all the King Kayfabers out there is spread these videos. You know, like whenever one of these videos pops up that you guys like, because that's always it's always the ongoing concern. You know, is getting new eyeballs.
Yeah.
And there for a while we were banging that drum pretty hard, but haven't so much stuff, you know, to mention. You could just go over like the weekly announcements. Could be a whole episode every week. But that's one that's really helpful, you know, is sharing these videos, especially whenever it's something that's near and dear to your heart, like we hear in some of our feedback. So keep that in mind, guys, as we continue making these videos. Because like the one that surprised me was last week we did the Bernie Wrights and Swamp Thing, and I'm like, oh man, we're gonna do nothing but Swamp Things. Like we could do Swamp Things and Bernie Wrights and stuff every week, and I was surprised by the response to it. It wasn't what I expected. So, you know, these videos, whenever they pop up, like if they overachieve, then you get more of them.
Right.
You know, but conversely, if they underachieve, then we're less likely to go back to that well. So keep that in mind as you guys watch these videos and think about the stuff that you do want to see more of, or the stuff that really speaks to you. Let your friends know that, you know, share that wherever you hang out online, because it is very helpful, and helpful to us just to indicate what to look at, you know. One of my favorite parts of this channel is how, and we're going to do it today, you know, like we're going to look at some comics today that I haven't seen discussed by other comics voices out there, but I'd never know what people will respond to, you know, once we get off of maybe like a very narrow track. And I like talking about all these comics, so if you see something weird pop up on the channel and you're into it, man, help us get those numbers up. We'll do more, you know, we'll go in that direction more.
It's true. People are popping up into the chat.
Welcome everybody.
And I guess we could get started in a second here.
I saw, I feel like we've been talking about selling comics so much lately, but I saw Barnes & Noble was doing a buy one, get one free of Image books. And I guess the way it works is that you pay for the most expensive of the 2 books and then get the other one free. That's a wild promotion. I was trying to figure out how that works, because as near as I can tell, the discount would have, you know, like I don't think the discount on Image books is 50%. Like if you're a bookstore,
Yeah.
it's probably like 40 or 45. I don't actually know, but I'm guessing it's less than 50%. So I don't know how that works if you're a bookstore. I guess you take a loss on a lot of books overall, because a lot of stuff isn't selling or you're discounting it or whatever. But man, I don't understand how retail works.
It's very nerve-wracking to me that these poor stores are now in a space of like, it's not a $2 book getting relegated to the dollar bin, you know, but it's a $15 book getting put in like a $5 bin or something. What do you see?
There's this thing. Oh, that's a hip. I was looking at his hip and I'm like, it looks like
Yeah.
a mouse is like in the
It
corner
does,
of the
yeah. It
screen,
looks like
but
a
it's
tangible object.
a very strange crop. Yeah, it's a very strange time for books. Because I think there are people that... My wife reads all the time and hates reading traditional books now. You know, she's gotten so used to, like, reading by backlight. And I kind of understand it, because if I read comics at night in bed, my light is... It's not very bright.
Yeah.
Like, and that's on me. I need to get a better reading light or whatever. But if I have it on my iPad, it's not an issue.
It's true.
And it's not hard to get into that. You know, and you compound that with my shelves are bursting at the seams. So I do understand it, but I don't know where people are going to be reading books either. I don't know what a provider is anymore. Like, if Comixology is kind of on its way out, I just don't know. If everything's just standardized now, is you don't need a comics app, you just read it like you would a Kindle book. I joined a book club at my local library and read their first book this week. We'll talk about that next week probably. But it does make me aware of how easy it is to just, like, pull a book up from the library on my iPad.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's very convenient.
Good to go?
Yeah, I think I'm ready. Hello and welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Jim Rugg.
I'm Ed Piscor.
Before we begin today, I want to point everybody at the Cartoonist Kayfabe Patreon. There are 3 levels there to suit whatever your needs are. You will get access to our videos early. You will also, if you're a King Kayfaber level, get access to our recording session. So right now, a bunch of our King Kayfabers are watching us record these videos and giving us feedback along the way, prepping for interview episodes and things of that nature. So lots of benefits to joining that Patreon. Check that out if you haven't already and see if one level is right for you. And don't worry, if you're not ready to join Patreon, you will still be getting our daily videos every day on YouTube here. So nothing will change if you don't change it. Also, the best way to support Cartoonist Kayfabe, pick up our books. This is our bibliography. Hulk Grand Design, Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive, Plain Janes, and Street Angel Princess of Poverty are my latest and greatest. Ed Piscor's Red Room Trigger Warnings and Antisocial Network available now, with Crypto Killers now up for pre-order. The 3rd season of Red Room coming to your comic shop very soon. Hip Hop Family Tree celebrating 10 years this year. X-Men Grand Design and WYSIWYG. If you can find a good, well-stocked comic shop, you might still be able to find that one in print. So pick up those books, add them to your shelf, and keep Cartoonist Kayfabe going strong. So today we're going to look at kind of this is just book porn as far as I'm concerned. Ed, I talked about seeing the Penguin editions of Amazing Spider-Man and Black Panther in airport bookstores as I was traveling a little bit. The books that I saw were paperback editions, but same size format. You can see this is a substantial book. This has Jungle Action as well as a couple of the Jack Kirby Fantastic Four issues that featured the early appearances of Black Panther. So you're probably getting, I don't know, 15 plus issues worth of comics here. This is a hardcover edition, so it's a little bit different than the super handsome paperbacks that I was talking about. But whenever I found this edition, as a book design lover, I could not pass it up.
It's gilding.
Oh man, how beautiful is this? It's so fit for a character who is a king, and the black and gold. This should be a Pittsburgh edition as far as I'm concerned. But I fell in love with the look of these books, and we'll go through it. We'll look at some of the printing and talk about that in a minute. But I have to linger on the cover just because I really do love this edition of it. And I think they have Captain America and Spider-Man for sure. I saw. I'm not sure what other editions they've done, but pretty nice that Penguin is putting these things out. You know, I think of Penguin as this like historical imprint of great literature. So it's kind of cool to see them going through Marvel's archives and trying to prepare some editions of that material and really framing it through that context of like pop culture history and the significance of the Marvel universe. And you know, like with the Amazing Spider-Man, it's Ditko's. It's like 15 issues of Steve Ditko's Spider-Man. So you are getting some really nice comics in these editions. I would say check them out if you come across them. They're kind of an affordable way to see some of these old issues, these archive issues, if you don't already have them, or maybe even if you do. Like, I actually have most of these.
Right.
But I got a little bit of a deal on this book, and honestly, I spontaneously bought it just because I was so overwhelmed. Again, let me show you those beautiful gilded edges. So nice.
$50 price point. It is noteworthy in that, like, when Penguin does this stuff with literature, it's like a $10 book. or
This is definitely a
$5 book.
deluxe, and the deal that I got, it was it was a Barnes and Noble purchase when they were doing half off, so I ended up getting it for 25. I probably wouldn't have bought it for 50, even though it's probably worth 50 based on what books cost. And look, from right in the beginning, like before we even get a titles page, they're doing bios of the creators in this issue. I mean, talk about trying to sell me this book.
Right.
This is how you do it, you know, really elevating the creators, even the people that are doing intros. You see like Billy Graham to Jack Kirby, you know, there's a few artists that are represented in here. Rich Buckler does quite a bit. So you get bios of all the major creators, and then you get a little bit of context of the character and Penguin doing Marvel stuff. So makes sense, you know. Penguin Random House now distributing Marvel books. Why not partner with Marvel to produce some books themselves? And you can see in the table of contents what is reprinted here. Fantastic Four 52-53, the first Black Panther appearances from 1966, and then Jungle Action 6 through 21, the 70s series that featured Black Panther. Get some introduction into the series. And they handled this introduction very interesting because they refer to Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. There's no assigning one guy as being like the main creative force behind it. It's just like it's one entity, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby.
Right.
And probably not the worst way at this point to handle it, because how much can we argue over who deserves which credits? You know what I mean? Like by grouping them, at least they weight them the same, which is pretty nice if you think of those old Fireside Marvel books, which would have been like the first Marvel books in bookstores. Those were Stan Lee creator. And so at least now you're getting kind of a split there at the very least. So go through a couple of these intros, which are fantastic. Very much they lean on the scholarly side of contextualizing these comics. They even say so in the very beginning whenever they talk about Penguin collection of Marvel comics and what they aim for. So that scholarly part, if you think of those old Penguin paperbacks, it was kind of like the literary book, the books that you'd be required to read in school.
Yeah, the canon.
Yes, so now, you know, put the Marvel books in there. So again, I think we looked at this first appearance of
I don't think so.
with Tom.
I don't think so.
No? Oh man, this is an issue then we should do. You know, first appearance of Black Panther, absolutely, and probably one to save for a Tom Scioli guest episode.
He might have the issue.
Yeah, which would be awesome. It's kind of a matte coated paper, so the colors they're saturated, but they're not. It's not gloss.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they just shot from like original colors. That's my guess. If you look, it looks like that's probably what they're pulling their colors from, and didn't have to, you know, desaturate as like some of these old reprints will do, where they try to get the yellow off the pages. I like the yellow charm. Like this is another one where if I had one constructive criticism for these reprints, I would say like look at those Carl Barks reprints and think about adding a 5% yellow screen,
right,
even to the margins, just to warm it up a little bit, just warm up that paper just slightly.
Yeah, and this paper, like, yeah, it's white, but it has a little gray tinge, like it's being helped along a little bit.
Yeah, and boy, the Kirby, you know, the reprints are very top notch. If you look at the line work, is extremely crisp, so they certainly did their work on that part, you know, to give you a nice version of this stuff. And you know, going back to 60s, that's saying something, man. We've seen a lot of reprints as readers over the years, and they don't always pop quite like that. Take note of the Black Panther costume here early on. In the back, some of the extra materials, and they have some cool extra materials, like Don McGregor talking about his scripting of this series, but they have an early Jack Kirby Black Panther costume that's very different than what we end up with. And I feel like that Black Panther costume, pretty iconic over the years. The Kirby original design, much more in line with 60s superhero, you know, much more colorful and stuff. And I think that simple design is really something that stands out. A little bit like a Daredevil or something. Even, you know, thinking about it now that you see the gloves, I feel like that's one of those Daredevil signs too.
Right.
So, but nevertheless, I think it's an iconic design, and the one that they ended up choosing, I think, is better than that first design. So we'll take a look at that as we get back here. But these Jungle Action comics, I mentioned that I have a run of these because I think these are really exciting comics. So whenever I flipped through this collection and saw this is what they reprinted, I was pretty excited by that because I think these comics get amazing. Rich Buckler is your main artist for the first several of these things. Look at this for Klaus Janson on inks. It almost, to me, looks like the Neil Adams.
Absolutely, yeah, like Klaus Janson in pure crusty bunker mode.
Yes. Yeah, and early on, I mean, this is like 72, I think, so probably very
Start
early
of
in
his
in his career. Exactly. I can't remember if Jungle Action, it might have been a split book.
Yeah.
I can't remember
Yeah, I
if
think
that's
it was.
true or not, because it feels like some of these are a little bit short, but that's also a time period whenever Marvel's expanding like mad, and you see Jansen there as your inker, but not colorist. But one of the reasons these books stand out to me is they have a lot of these exciting either splash pages or two-page splashes. And I mean, like him going down the waterfall, cutting in and out of like the big picture and the close-up panels. I think that's really sharp. And some cool lettering as we get into this too. And I think it's Artie Simek on lettering.
And that was Rich Buckler too, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, it's Rich Buckler for
very ambitious.
quite a bit.
Page layouts.
He does some cool stuff that I think sticks with the visual characterization of Black Panther, like some of the stuff of him, say, sitting in a throne.
Yeah.
Even the body language of him, it just really feels like he crafts a personality onto this character that sticks with the character. Yeah, I give. I know Buckler is often the butt of certain jokes with the way he's known for lifting things, but he does some top-notch work on Black Panther here. You know, like, how about this for using your color holds and your screens and stuff effectively?
For sure.
This is one of those two-page spreads that one of my favorite splash pages in comics, period. Feels like this or Masters of Kung Fu, one of them owes a debt to the other.
Right.
But I don't know that either one is where this starts, but I
feel like
love...
it all comes from Steranko.
Yeah, I love the motif of doing your letters as panels. And you mentioned Steranko, the color treatment and with the screens in the background feels like it really, this is the channeling Steranko design here. And you see this time Buckler and Jansen as artists. So this might be Jansen doing finishes like he would do over a lot of the Frank Miller Daredevils. You know, bringing a lot of his own, I don't know, expertise or his own artist craftsmanship to this.
Yeah, I see Glennis is on color.
Yeah.
I was going to bring up, like, because that Serprint Zipatone on the front, that's a Klaus staple, but she's got the credit for that.
Yeah. Some of this use of, like, screen tones, too, these pop up, and I think that color hold may have been a screen tone, that original magenta, but you'll see this use of screen tone somewhat liberally throughout, and that's a pretty new staple, I think, for an early 70s Marvel comic. Love this stuff too, right? Always having your cutaways.
Totally.
Not sure who's responsible for that, but that and the maps. Like I remember seeing somebody post, if the book has a map in it, a hand-drawn map, they're on board. They weren't referring to comics either, you know. It would have been like
it's like Tolkien or something.
Yeah. Here's Gil Kane with a fill-in issue, and Gil Kane will do several of your covers. I think this is probably a Gil Kane pencil job on the cover based on these hands. It's funny because a lot of this stuff isn't signed, so you're looking at it and you're kind of guessing, like, what are you looking at? How great is this if you're a young comics reader and you've got your superhero fighting a rhino?
Yeah, totally.
You don't have to be young. I was pretty excited going back through this again and revisiting it. This is a shot of our Panther Palace that's used on the back, reproduced in like the gold foil stamp.
Straight out of Thundercats, man. Pretty
sharp. Makes you think about how... boy, they could have been selling toys for this stuff much earlier on.
Totally.
So
let's check out some of that Billy Graham.
Yeah, here we go. Billy Graham and Klaus Janson. And again, Gil Kane, I think unmistakably on this cover. Look at the reflection, though. Billy Graham shows up probably fresh off of Luke Cage, Hero for Hire. I think that was his first big piece. But look at that great, like, even the lettering is reflected in the water. Those kind of details, you know, like that to me is artists that care about what they're drawing.
Absolutely.
Putting in that extra effort. And then when you go into like a throne room or, you know, into the actual palace, you gotta dig deep in your morgue file to find some reference for that kind of a background.
That's what I'm saying. Iconic page right here, because this is printed in that Abrams 50 Years of Marvel Comics book. So this is like just imprinted in my brain.
Yeah, it's a great panel. Yeah, so many of these panels, like if you were just going to pull them out and isolate them as a single image, a lot of them work. And Billy Graham, I think, may be the main artist now going forward. Here's our Jack Kirby, the original costume design.
Oh my goodness.
Or at least one of the costumes that was, that he put together for it. This almost feels like a fanzine to me. And I kind of love that. Stuff was just a little bit more informal. And here you go with another one of these great lettering and splash pages. I'm under the impression that the artist is doing the lettering for this because it's so integrated into the background.
It's
like
true.
that reflection on the previous splash page, I think that has to be the hand of the artist. Although it'd be amazing if the letterer did like the splash page and then the artist went in and did the reflection of that lettering.
You notice that Klaus Janson is the through line as inker on the Buckler stuff and on the Billy Graham stuff. That was kind of his function early on in his Marvel career. Like when he was on Daredevil, the purpose was to take Gil Kane and to take Gene Colan and to take whoever else steps in. Just so happens to be that Frank Miller is one of those guys,
Yep.
and try to keep some cohesion amongst all these people. Try to have some homogenization, so that basically so that the art doesn't shine more than one artist more than the other. You keep a consistency on your title. It is corporate comics.
Billy Graham is killing it.
Yeah.
I feel like page turn after page turn, he's doing stuff, and it's really different from page to page, like what works. You know, speaking of that consistency, I had to marvel there for a minute at the art. It was a different way that the comics were done, because like you would get a fill-in artist, and it was almost like the fill-in artist would try to channel, you know, the consistency, whatever the previous artist was, and you would see that a lot more in the past. I mean, like at this point, I don't think there's any attention to that kind of thing now. But that was really like a standard part whenever deadlines were a thing and artists struggled to keep up. Craig Russell on inks. So
P. Craig Russell.
A very young Craig Russell filling in here for Klaus Janson. And again, Graham is just, it feels like he's just thrilled with this book. You know, I think sometimes you'll see that writer-artist team up where it's like things are clicking and they're pushing each other. And I mean, every page has a beautiful panel on it.
So verbose.
It
That
is.
fucking Don McGregor, man.
It is. And here's a tip for everybody at home that's into Billy Graham art. First appearance of Venom. He did Saber. Whenever Eclipse goes to like an ongoing Saber series, Don McGregor and Billy Graham reunite, I think, as of issue maybe 3 or so of that series. So if you're a Billy Graham fan and you're looking for more Billy Graham, that's a place to look.
We call him Superstar Billy Graham in Cartoonist kayfabe
Yes,
terms.
we do. Absolutely. I also see Dwayne Turner, who did a Black Panther, I think it was Panther's Prey, miniseries when I was a kid. Maybe my first Black Panther comics. But they were reproduced from his pencils, and it reminds me a lot of the Billy Graham Black Panther. And especially like this era, as he's getting into like all the muscle striations and everything. When you see his back, it looks like the most powerful back muscles in comics. And I think a lot of that probably influenced the Panther's Prey version. This is Dan Green now on inks. What we're building toward is Billy Graham's going to take over the complete art chores. But you see a few different hands come on. And how about that for a wild, like super close up of a hand? These artists were such in the mode of like everything has muscles on it. You would get a hand and it would be like just, you could see the musculature in between knuckles and stuff.
It does make me wonder if Billy Graham sort of passed through the Continuity Studios brand of comics. Look, let's do it again.
Yeah. And this is Billy Graham full on. So he's doing pencils and inks at this point. I think that's a Gil Kane cover there. I mean, those muscles, unmistakably Gil Kane.
Yeah, from his
Probably
Hogarth school.
Not on, maybe not on finishes, but definitely in the pencil stage. And again, like pointing out Graham doing these interesting layouts, like that's a 2-page spread layout that we have not seen yet. So really, it's a good run, and man, I'm impressed by Penguin that this was their choice for a collection. You know, these are some of my favorite comics from that time period, and to get them in a nice all-in-one spot, well done on your choices. Yeah, I had considered when I first saw this actually emailing the editor to compliment them or the designer, but there's some of those back muscles. You know,
mullet.
That dark blue costume really lends itself to just all you're doing. You're drawing naked people. You know, I mean, this is just pure nothing but anatomy, pretty much. Then just color it blue. Note to the colorist. And this is basically your movie scene here. You know, at least this particular moment. How about this for a great page layout? And there's panel action. This little kid's going to run into Killmonger to knock him off the cliff. So you have like sequences of action going around our face as like a panel, kind of like a gutter. All right, so the story that I don't understand this. See if you can solve this one, everybody at home. This is the epilogue of what we basically, the big multi-issue story that had built to this epilogue. Turn the page, and it's almost like this was maybe going to be a 2-page spread that they changed, but kept the epilogue.
Just trying things.
Maybe.
Just trying things.
I was going back and forth on it and trying to figure out, like, does that line up? Is it like he's jumping, like it's part of the rock cliff that he's jumping in front of? Love the way those leopards are drawn also. Just for the pattern, you know? It's almost like a different visual motif to bring in something that's that graphic of a pattern.
Yeah, there's something weird about it.
Yeah.
It's like Dalmatian or like the polka dots or like there's something uncanny that I'm not like. I mean, that's clearly just like.
It's a dot pad. It reminds me of like poster art.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like screen tone, you know, because it's kind of flattening, but it definitely looks different than the rest. And now we're going to see this storyline of Black Panther versus the Klan.
Yes, classic. When he comes down off the cross.
Yes.
On fire, and then uses the cross as a battering ram. That's like one of those classic issues, man.
Absolutely.
That would be such a cock tease if they cut it off right before that.
Pretty powerful imagery to see in a comic book, I think.
Sure.
And I can't imagine it was less powerful in the 70s. Like,
yeah.
This had to be a wild thing. I always love this panel where it's like Black Panther in costume in the supermarket.
Totally.
It's
This is my introduction to Billy Graham for sure. Getting a hold of these issues pretty young.
It also feels like this could have been your pinch this for the opening of Sylvester Stallone's Cobra. Big showdown in our supermarket to start the iconic movie. And here we go, right? 2-page spread. Yeah, it's definitely, I think, a memorable. You know, I mean, this is something you can find reviews of. Pretty much throughout the internet. Yeah, this is a pretty iconic storyline. It's funny because it ends, and they actually don't have the conclusion in here because it ends, and then I think it's the Jungle Action comic ends, but there's like an issue or two to go that's wrapped up in like Marvel Premiere, I want to say, the very final installments. This reminds me of that lettering 2-page spread. Mm-hmm. It's not lettering, but it's kind of a similar page design. Boy, and you still see that heavy Don McGregor style captioning. So some of the cool back matter in this is Don McGregor's basically writing notes on this experience of writing and what he's going for. And he wrote Black Panther forever. He wrote like a 26-parter in Marvel Comics Presents that Gene Colan drew, which is pretty interesting. I bought that off eBay one time, and it was like a run of like, I don't know, issue 10 to 30 or something.
Right.
And the guy had like issue 1 to whatever, and we were haggling over price. And I'm like, you keep those first 10 issues, sell those again. I just want the storyline. But that was from Masterworks, is what that was originally from. And then this is kind of cool, Ed, and something that maybe we should do at some point, where we actually go through. This is a Marvel plot, right? So thinking of like Marvel method, and it's broke down, right? So it's like page 10, page 11, page 13. But it's not broke down in full script. It's totally this. That's your Marvel method of how this stuff would have been written. And 4 pages covers, 14-page storyline. So they are shorter. I don't know what the rest of the issue was, but I love seeing this because we've been looking at scripts lately. That's a whole different process for writing this stuff, and probably more like how I work.
Yeah.
You know, whenever I'm writing for myself. And then I love this. This is a tip if everybody's putting together books of their own. Have your further reading list. Yeah. You know, in this case, it's all Black Panther, but if you're a cartoonist and you're collecting your work, it would be your other books. You know, like, why not learn from Penguin? You know, Penguin has a pretty good record. They probably have some good ideas in here. And I guess that is the rest of the Penguin classics that they've done so far, the Captain America and Amazing Spider-Man. I've seen both of those volumes. Same deal, you know, and the paperback, I don't know, it's probably in the $25 range, I'm guessing, so a more affordable version. Like I said, I got this one for half off. I don't even know if I'm going to keep, this may be one that I end up passing on, but I wanted to show it off on this channel, to be quite frank. I mean, I just think this is an absolutely gorgeous, beautiful book.
Yeah.
I love the design of it so much, so... good comics, good collection, and proof that you can make a very nice reprint edition book with Marvel as your subject matter.
Leave it to Penguin. They have some years in the field.
Yeah, I was ready to figure out like how to cut promos where it's like, what are Marvel's best looking books of the last year? Because we've got
And it's
Abrams
like
putting out a couple of them.
Yeah, it's IDW doing
Yeah.
artist editions.
It's wild. I think they are working with at least 4 publishers in in producing Marvel characters, but outside of that, Marvel publishing.
Yeah.
I don't know what to make of that. I don't know. I guess it makes sense if you're a licensor, but if I'm Marvel, if I work for Marvel, man, I feel like there's competition out there. Like, I need to make my books better.
Right.
So,
that's just not a concern of theirs, man. You good to go, Jimmy?
I am.
Okay, favors like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell, we'll notify you when new vids are available. Jimmy, tell the people what's out there, dude.
Hulk Grand Design, man. Speaking of trying to make a good-looking Marvel book, that's my best effort. And that'll be out in stores possibly when you see this video, if not very shortly thereafter. Pick that one up at your local comic shop or wherever you buy books. Street Angel Deadliest Girl Live and Street Angel Princess of Poverty from Image Comics and The Plain Janes, the first young adult graphic novel, are my latest books. Pick those up wherever you buy books. And you can join me on patreon.com/JimRugg, where you can see lots more of my art. You can see what I'm working on now, and you can download out-of-print zines and mini comics there.
Red Room Crypto Killers issue 1 is being solicited in stores right now. Murder on the Dark Web for Fun and Profit is the name of the game. There are 2 trade paperbacks out there right now, Trigger Warnings and The Antisocial Network. Scoop those up. I'm serializing new Red Room comics on my own Patreon. Link in the description below. Hip Hop Family Tree celebrating 10 years. 3 volumes of X-Men Grand Design and WYSIWYG are out in the wild. Scoop those up, check them out. Keep the lights on in the Kayfabe Studios. What else do we have out there, Jimmy?
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe newsletter at the links below this video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts, merchandise, mugs, hats, fanny packs, stickers, and lots more at our spread shop. That link is also below this video.
Great way to support the channel. Give them those marching orders. We'll be on our way.
Read more comics. A lot of black and white this week, Ed.
That's true.
I think all the rest of our books are black and white.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Now I kind of feel bad that we did a color book. Could have been our theme.
Oh man, I realized we didn't even tell the Kayfabers like what we got going on. We have scheduled, and it looks like it's going to happen. But we have Eastman and Laird, man. We're going to talk Turtles comics and stuff. I should put that. I should pin that to the top.
Yeah, definitely. Eastman and Laird, people.
Yeah, both.
Talk about us forgetting the lead there. I'm so excited to see those guys on camera together, and oh man, I'm so excited that it's happening on Cartoonist Kayfabe. Just all of it. That is such a win-win-win as a fan. I can't wait.
Everybody's popping, dude.
Yeah. How can't they? I'll tell you, I don't know how you'd be a King Kayfaber and not be excited by it.
I know.
It's a little bit like podcast comedians talk about, like, playing to their crowd or whatever. I feel like this is 100% Venn diagram. If you're watching us right now, you are probably super psyched for Eastman and Laird together again.
Yeah, and to be clear, they're in their own houses and stuff. It's been a long time since the boys shared a house and shit like that.
Yeah, that'll be maybe the 3rd recording. We'll have them back living together. Be like a Legends house.
Jumbo wants to know, man. Did you get the Tash and Spider-Man?
I did not.
Did you grab anything? The EC book or anything?
No, I didn't. And it was the same thing as the Sin City, where it's just like...
Big books.
They are big books. They are big books. I do have an order at my comic shop, though, that I'm just waiting to hit the buy button on, that I've been putting together for what feels like months.
Yeah, that seems to be your usual birthday speed.
Yeah, I like to do that about once a year, so it's... You know what our lists are like at this point. They're such strange things. And then I look at the stuff that I'm buying and I feel like shame. It's some of it. It's just the dumbest comics.
I've seen that with you also, man. like going out shopping and then you have a stack like this, but then by the time that you check out, the stack is this big, and then you look a shell of yourself.
Yeah, it's it's tumultuous.
Fife's that guy too. where he gets super stoked, super excited, and then it's just like, fuck.
Yeah, it's I don't know, man. I wonder if the King K-Fabers have that experience. I don't know how often they are rummaging through 50-cent boxes and stuff, but it's hard to tell what I actually need. You know, I don't need any of that stuff. I watched this documentary on finance, and this lady was going through coaching, and her thing was like, love, need, want.
Yeah.
I can't buy comics that way. Like, I can't filter them. It's such a disaster. And then whenever I put back those 50-cent books, inevitably there's something that I need to go back in and try to find. That's it. That's the path of madness. That's the H.P. Lovecraft of digging for comics.
Man, in Japan, like looking for that, I picked up that Fantastic Four doujinshi the first day, and then I'm like, you know, I gotta pace myself. Like, it's the first day. Like, I'm just going around, I'll put it right back. I'll remember where it is, and then after like a month worth of fucking off in that town, I didn't even remember which Mandarake doujinshi section it was in, man. I did find it, obviously, but I actually do think it got switched from, because they will move stock from the Akihabara one to Nakano Broadway and vice versa, and I do think that in the time that I was out there, it moved from one store to the other, because I just have a very vivid memory of seeing it in one spot. Gaslighting me, man.
Yeah,
they knew I was out there.
Yeah, I imagine a month of looking at comics in a foreign country. It's gonna be hard to keep track of exactly where you saw that one on day one.
Yeah,
that feels like 5 years of time. All right, man, ready when you are.
Let's do it.
Hello and welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Jim Rugg.
I'm Ed Piscor.
Before we begin today, I want to remind everybody that we do have a Cartoonist Kayfabe Patreon. Still has that new car smell. 3 levels to join there. Get access to our videos early, which can save you a bit on the kayfabe effect. We've seen that happen on a couple of our videos already, where prices have spiked by the time we release the video on YouTube. The other effect, if you are a King Kayfaber, is you get to sit and watch us record these videos live and talk back and forth, give us some input on upcoming special episodes, whatever the case may be. So right now, as we are recording this, we are also talking to a bunch of King Kayfabers. So check it out, see which plan suits your needs. And if you're not ready to join Patreon, no worries. We will still be coming to you daily here on YouTube. The other best way to support us, working cartoonist, buy our books. This is our bibliography. Hulk Grand Design, Street Angel, Deadly Squirrel Alive, and Princess of Poverty, Plain Janes are my latest books. Red Room, 3rd season gearing up. Pre-order that one now. Pick that up at your comic shop. Hip Hop Family Tree celebrating 10th anniversary this year. Amazing. Congratulations, Ed. X-Men Grand Design and WYSIWYG. All available now wherever you buy books or comics. So today we are going to look at kind of a strange one. The Adventures of Sweet Gwendolyn by John Willy. This book is, John Willy died in 1962, so he's active in the 40s and 50s primarily. He was a publisher of a fetish magazine called Bazaar. I always like getting a little bit of that, like the self-publisher part is something that I'm interested in. As you can imagine, this book covers not just the comics that he made and his artwork, but there's also extra information, you know, giving some context to his career and biography. This was printed in 1999, and I think I may have bought my copy from the publisher. It certainly came out of a similar area, and he was selling like 20 of them. So I think that may be the case with this. But the reason John Willy is on my radar is I'm working on a nonfiction crime book, and one of the characters is an associate of John Willy. And so that came up kind of in my research, and I started digging around, and I've heard of Sweet Gwendolyn. It's I guess kind of an adult graphic novel, prototype of a graphic novel.
This exact image would be thumbnail size in the back of heavy metal magazines whenever they're shipping, like, shopping around like a catalog of material. So this very specific image is like burnt into my brain. I think it is the cover image to several collections or albums, however they disseminated this thing, man. But talk about coitus interruptus. Like, when you go through it, and you could just start going through pages or whatever, man. But it's a simpler time, and they can't take it to that hardcore level by any means. So obviously it's so horny of a comic, but there's never like payoffs. It's just like, let's get these chicks fucking tied up, and then I don't know, the story ends.
That's it. That's exactly it. And no nudity in this stuff. He has done some nudity, and that's in here, but not as part of the Sweet Gwendolyn stuff, because he's mail ordering. You know, he's sending this stuff out on his mailing list.
Yeah.
And you have to be cautious. You know, if you're having anything that's really porn, you can be stopped. You can be arrested. You know, this is a time in the 40s and 50s where you can't really be sending that stuff through the mail.
Happens to this day. Like people get their PayPal accounts shut down. I know people who have book businesses and stuff, and when PayPal gets righteous and is looking at like what people are buying, their PayPal accounts get shut down.
So one of the cool things is, this Sweet Gwendolyn story is one of the first things that he does, and it goes through his own publishing, which Bizarre has its ups and downs, so he doesn't publish it continuously, and at times he'll partner with other people to publish. So this is their first version of this story. He comes back to it in the late 50s and basically finishes the story, redoes it, and packages it as what we would call a graphic novel, you know, a paperback. You can compare these pages because he is redrawing almost the entire thing at this later date. So here's one that you can see the kind of this page where he is redrawing. So you see old man and hugging that old man, a completely different, you know, rendering style. Same panel, same concept, but redrawn 15 years later, 20 years later, and drawing it at this point where he's going to publish it and own it himself. And I feel like putting in that extra effort, but also with 15 years more experience as a working artist.
Yeah.
And he would go, and it's pretty cool. I mean, you get 30 pages of that, you know, that you can actually compare because it's a complete reprint.
Right.
So that's kind of a neat feature. This is a really nice book for a variety of these reasons. And he would be like big influence on a lot of cartoonists, but Eric Stanton, who we looked at in a previous episode, I think is the most obvious lineage. Gene Bilbro is another one that is cited in sort of in the text in here. Only one known interview, and it's with the Kinsey Report. Remember, like the Kinsey?
Oh yeah, the sex guy.
Yeah, exactly. Has a 5-hour interview with him, but John Willy dies of a brain tumor in 1962. Is diagnosed in 1961, and his interview is conducted after his brain tumor diagnosis, and the original tapes are lost. So there's an abridged version, and then there's a typed manuscript. So the biographer or the author of this book at times calls out like maybe this is not accurate, you know, certain pieces from that interview, but it's still kind of noteworthy to me that, you know, an institution like Kinsey is looking at him as like,
makes so much sense.
Come on, yeah, it does,
because
that's
like,
not how the world always works.
Yeah. I mean, like looking through this, like
look at this for crazy.
Totally,
That feels like that's a Red Room prop
absolutely.
ed.
Like and before that, there's some definite like Red Room stuff. I mean, there's torture elements to this kind of thing, man. But just saying, like, thinking about like the time period that this stuff was first created and the kink of it, like Kinsey came to mind while I was going through this book.
Yeah, 100%. It's a perfect fit. And he talks about like he would do photo reference for all this stuff. So
Absolutely.
as you're looking at this art, like you can see it's pretty accurate. You know, it's some of this stuff is obviously exaggerated, but you can see kind of the root of accuracy underneath all of that. His other occupation was photographer. So
Sure.
he was doing kink photography. High heels were the main fetish, and bondage is, you know, I think every page we've looked at has had rope on it and probably high heels. It's a different time period. Betty Page appears in Bizarre, and there is speculation about that because supposedly they didn't really meet. He was out of town doing work at the time, and so one of his assistants, I guess, photographed her.
Bunny Yeager is a famous Betty Page photographer.
So you know, like it's a small world back then in terms of like what's being produced, and all of these people. If you read Eric Stanton, if you read, you know, kind of the history of this stuff, the same names come up. Irvin Klaw, a guy that, you know, he partners with briefly, who was a distributor, who's, you know, I'm sure you can find biographies on him, probably this thick as well. But you get to see, like, one of the nice things with this book, I picked it up because I was curious about John Willy. This book feels like it's everything. It's as much as you're going to find because it has a lot of his other artwork besides, like, the comics that he did, which, by the way, I don't know how you'd call them anything but a graphic novel.
Right.
decades before Will Eisner, popularizes that term. Maybe porn didn't just invent or didn't just popularize VHS. Like maybe it also was the one that
Fuels innovation, man.
mainstreamed the graphic novel format.
Sex sells.
Some of his spot illustrations like this, he was a very good cartoonist, very good illustrator. And I thought I would show some of... He did a couple comics serials. I think 2 complete and then maybe 2 or 3 others that weren't quite finished. But he also did, like, this is the stuff where there is nudity. And he describes this as he did this for money. Like, he needed money at the time whenever he took this job. But you see these are watercolors.
Yeah.
So pretty adept illustrator, once again. I can even see, like, a Mark Beecham style in this stuff, and I don't know if Beecham was actually looking, but it's more of that overlap of if you're a certain type of figure artist, you're probably going to have some commonality there. So I won't linger on these pages to keep us out of the YouTube doghouse, but gives you an idea of I don't know, man, a dark side of comics history. This is certainly not something that I come across too often when I see comics history, but it exists. In a weird way, it's tangential to like Tijuana Bibles or something.
It's the evolution, it bridges the gap. This is the Cro-Magnon man between Tijuana Bibles and proper, comic book pamphlets.
Yeah, and I'm going to linger on this page just to point out, like, his black and white drawing technique. Look at how much you see there.
Yeah.
Like, there's brush, in some of the foliage and some of the heavy line work. Amazing pen line, cross-hatching, almost like a scribbling for some of the leaves and things. It's very accomplished as an illustrator. Whenever he was basically dying, like he sent once he was diagnosed with an inoperable brain tumor, he sent a letter out to his mailing list basically saying, this is it. This is my last correspondence with all of you. I'll be destroying the mailing list after this, kind of thanking them, which is amazing. Talk about a different time period where, like, in a weird way, we have that now. With social media, like, we interact with our fans now much more closely than, say, for decades that interaction happened. But whenever you're publishing and distributing to them, like, he's sending correspondence to these people regularly.
Yeah.
It's very, it's very strange to see that personal level. How about this? Continuing the idea that this is a great collection, you get to see some of his layouts. So again, if you're interested in John Willy, like, this book really kind of scratches that itch and covers it all. But one of his instructions, he had a big portfolio of artwork, and he gave it to a friend and was like, destroy this once I die. And the guy did not.
Right.
And I don't know how to feel about that.
I know what you mean, man, because I have people very, very close to me that have given me instructions and stuff, and I will abide by it, but it hurts me. Like, my philosophy on art, like, I made videos showing all my little kid stuff, and I see a growth, and I think there's an inspiring thing to see when you show, like, all the work, like, in a row and as the years go by. But there are people that they want only their best stuff to be seen. So I would abide by those wishes, but it hurts me.
You don't have this book. If that guy follows his wishes and destroys that art, we don't have this book. And again, I just don't know how to process that.
Yeah, I know.
It's really tough.
And it's also
I guess if you want it destroyed, if you're him, you got to destroy it yourself.
But the karma, like, if he destroyed the mailing list, right? He had all these subscribers, and maybe these guys, maybe it's J. Edgar Hoover, and he doesn't want
right.
people knowing that he's getting Adventures of Sweet Gwendolyn comics or whatever. So, like, that's super honorable.
Yeah.
But karma hasn't paid him back. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, no, this guy didn't do the honorable thing to him, and he paid it forward. So that's the sad thing there. Thinking about him specifically. For the culture, it's a good thing. It's great that we have this stuff, but.
The other way people might enjoy a book like this is through the costume design. The attention to almost like the fashion of this stuff. Yeah, it's totally, it's extreme fetish, but it's also like the attention to even like fabric.
Yeah, we totally, like, we talk about artists
impressive.
Fetishizing different things, and you could see, like, in the comics part of this stuff earlier, that looks like Red Room shit. That's a killer.
That does look like Red Room.
The photo refs he's using really it's for the chicks. Like, when there's like a bendy pose, like, where their asses in the camera and stuff, you could tell that it's pretty accurate. But then the guys look snidely whiplash cartoony, and the drapery ain't there.
Yeah, here you go. Some of the bizarre sketches and covers and stuff that would have been done, like on glossy. Like I said, this is probably, like that is your cover image, but you can see he's really quite an illustrator.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you just know his mama was just so disappointed in him. Like you got all this talent, and this is what you choose to do with it.
Yeah. Whenever he found out, the brain tumor, he packed up and moved back to England, where he was from, and lived with his sister the last year of his life. So not too estranged from the family. She's quoted in this book as well. And I just wanted to point out, I lingered on one page to point out his pen and ink skills. Here he's doing like ink wash. And, I think this stuff looks as good as the straight pen and ink as well. You can see him doing some really nuanced stuff with like wet on wet kind of watercolor stuff there. How about that for a fun, outside of the fetish world, just as a fun panel, like within the superhero comics world that we dwell in so much. You can almost imagine that being a Catwoman panel or something.
Totally. Like Ms. Fury.
Nice silhouettes. So, good cartoonist, good illustrator, one of those interesting artists, and a pretty nice book if you're interested in this kind of back matter.
It's very rare that end papers can teach you something.
There's a couple of pages of notes on, this is, I guess, where you're building those end pages from. I think this was a detailed correspondence that he actually sent to somebody about bondage and right and wrong things to do with it. Probably didn't hurt the Kenzie reps whenever they saw this and were like, let's get this guy on the horn.
Yeah, there's clearly an art to that stuff, man. You good to go, Jimmy?
Yes.
Okay, Faber's Life, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell. We'll notify you when new vids are available. Tell the people what's out there, man.
Hulk Grand Design, as you can see here, coming to comic shops shortly. Pick that one up. If you haven't already pre-ordered it, you might want to do so. Street Angel, Deadly Squirrel Live, and Princess of Poverty, and The Plain Janes are my latest books. Those are all in print or coming to print soon. You can also join me on patreon.com/JimRugg, where you can see a lot more of my work. You can see my originals and what I'm working on next, and you can download out-of-print zines and mini comics there.
Red Room Crypto Killers issue 1 is being solicited in stores right at this very moment. Murder on the Dark Web for Fun and Profit is the name of the game in Red Room Comics. 2 trade paperbacks are out there in the wild right now, The Antisocial Network and Red Room Trigger Warnings. You can find those in better comic shops anywhere. I'm serializing the new Red Room stuff on my Patreon right now. $3 get you the archive, more than 300 pages up there as we speak. 10-year anniversary, Hip Hop Family Tree, 4 volumes of that out there. 3 volumes of X-Men Grand Design and WYSIWYG. Support the books and you support the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel. What else do we have going on, Jimmy?
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe newsletter at the links below this video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts, merchandise, mugs, hats, sweatshirts, stickers, and lots more at our spread shop. That link is also below this video.
Another great way to support the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel. Given those more take orders, we'll be on our way.
Read more comics.
What if we make your third video? Because this is just a 3-week for you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just like, let's do the Outlaw comic stuff on your phone. Yeah. And then...
Alright, let's see what we should do here.
Yeah. We're doing a top 5 Outlaw comics, hidden gems.
This is all Rain Ness.
Rain Ness, yeah, that makes so much sense.
This one we talked about. This is good shit. Do you know this stuff? This is Sandra Chang and then Mark Beecham in the back. And it's just like sex, violence, kung fu, 80s stuff. I like that one.
Yeah.
This is one we definitely should do. This is psychedelic. Look at the penmanship here. But then also it just gets into weird, not quite right. Models are off, and just strangeness. This one's pretty out there, and I don't think we've talked about this one on the channel yet.
Yeah. And
I think the cartooning is just
real good,
really impressive. It nails the obsession part.
Yeah, it's a Rebel Studio comic.
No, I think.
I saw that back. Never mind.
I don't know that it was published by anybody. Brett Warnock is connected to it somehow. But I think it's self-published, and he just helped. Check that out, because that's one that I like that came in our mail, and dude's first comic.
Yeah.
And it's like she just guts people and smiles about it. And
I see some cannibalism.
Yeah, it blew me away. And again, it's like a guy's first comic. Todd McFarlane intro.
That early Malibu
But look
connection.
at this crazy art.
Oh yeah, it's like that Rain Nest shit.
Here's Icon Devil. We could say fuck it to her pretty easily, you know, if we're trying to winnow this down, because that should be its own episode anyway. And this was one that I'm super eager, like we also haven't shown off. This is one that I looked at for a minute and went, did Ben Mara make this comic?
Oh, I know, man.
Because I mean, it's like that cover almost looks like
with the horseshoes.
The hair, that lady's hair is so much like a Ben Mara
Yeah,
character.
yeah, the pose and stuff. That's the thing about Ben Mara. Like these comics, you see, have this like level of artwork. They almost always fall apart at the writing stage, and like Ben Mara is able to sort of make good on the promise of these comics. Like that's the function of so much of what he does.
There are 10 here.
Yeah.
So if you think we should,
If you want to do it at 10, top 10 Outlaw comic hidden gems, then let's just fucking do that, man.
sounds good. Yeah, because this feels like something that should be. This is my kind of video.
And if you want to maybe at the end put a smorgasbord of the stuff for your thumbnail image, that might be the way to go. Is that a portfolio?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know this.
I was gonna do a TikTok on this. I was showing Natalie, and I'm like, "Do you think this is okay to do?" She's like, no.
I always think about her, like when you pull out your Sweet Gwendolyn's, like I just wonder like what she thinks of
You know what she thinks? She doesn't look at any of them.
Yeah. But she sees you like pull this
This
stuff out.
thing. This is like real nightmare stuff. This is the stuff that as like AI porn art
Yeah.
picks up. I feel like you want to be careful you don't see other people's streams. Look at how insane that is.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I get likes from Rain Ness on Facebook.
Yeah,
and
he's
stuff.
still around, and I'm so happy for that because I looked at this art when I first found it and was like, "Boy, that's a supernova. That dude shone bright." But you know how that ends.
Yes.
So I'm thrilled that he's still around. I think he's working on a new Damn Log edition.
That's
I
exciting.
can't remember where I saw that. It was somewhere on social media. It came up. So yeah, I'll just kind of rifle through them.
Cool.
Trying to think of who to start with. It's a strong start.
It should be somebody that we did, maybe that Chillville guy, because like we did a video on him, and you could sort
Perfect.
of preface it with that.
Yep.
Good to go?
Yeah. Start with these so I know where they're at. Yeah, sorry.
And everything's pretty much that size, right?
Yeah.
Comic size. Good to go?
Yeah. Hello and welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Jim Rugg.
I'm Ed Piscor.
Very exciting video today, Ed. This will be one of my favorites probably that we record this week. Before we get into it, I want to remind everybody that we do have a Cartoonist Kayfabe Patreon now. You can join us at multiple levels and receive these videos early ahead of time. Basically, as soon as we get them edited, we start to share them on our Patreon at the King Kayfaber level. You also get to sit in while we record these videos, interact with us through the chat, and sometimes give us some information as we are preparing for other feature episodes and interviews with special guests. So check that out, see what fits for you. The other way to support Cartoonist Kayfabe, pick up our books. Hulk Grand Design, Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive, and Princess of Poverty and Plain Janes are my latest books. Red Room, starting a new series coming up, Crypto Killers. X-Men Grand Design, Hip Hop Family Tree, and WYSIWYG are Ed's latest books. So add those to your collection if you haven't already. And Ed, let's dive into today's topic. A top 10 Outlaw comics that you haven't heard of before.
Yes.
Although if you're a longtime fan of our channel, you may have heard of Chillville.
Yeah.
One of those, these Outlaw comics, so many of them, you find them.
The regional, like the cartoonist lives in a town, went to a convention and sold them on consignment at the local comic shops in that region. The way that they get across, state lines is Todd McDevitt or somebody like just buys whole collections and brings them to Pittsburgh. This was in the dollar bins at Ides Comics. It was the very first comic in one of the boxes, and I automatically just assumed that like somebody put that there and went downstairs and was like, like I'll come back up and grab this one because the Ides guys are that way. Like, you gotta buy the shit on that floor and all that kind of thing. But it was the first comic in the first box I looked at one day, and
Wow.
and this is why you dig.
This is why you dig.
To find stuff like this, man, and we had to do a video about it because I pulled this, from a dig session, and I showed you the very next week, blew your fucking mind, and then the next week after that, you came by with all of his work.
Yeah, I mean, again, as you say, this is why you dig. Because I had not seen his stuff at all, but you know who did? Stephen King.
Yeah.
This is a cartoonist out of Maine, and did a couple of comics, self-published these 2 issues, and somehow got on Stephen King's radar and has done several projects with Stephen King. Not the easiest comics to find, unfortunately, but he's still alive and active, and I think there's rumors that they may do a new edition of this stuff. I hope they do, because we know, we get feedback from a lot of kayfabers. This stuff is appealing to more than just us,
Yeah.
but it's hard to find. So hopefully there'll be a new edition. There are a couple of other versions, and this reprints, as you can see, Chillville, but it's I was able to find these issues a little bit easier than I was Chillville. And you can see whenever we talk about Outlaw Comics, like, one of the staples is a lot of ink on the page. Check.
Yeah.
And that obsessive kind of mark making. And I think if we're in focus here, you can see, like, there are tens of thousands of tiny little lines that are kind of hatched together to make these images.
They don't show up so great on this newsprint.
Yeah,
if you want the optimal version, the highest fidelity, you've got to get the Welcome to Chillville self-published on this like white paper.
Yeah, he did well for himself self-publishing this stuff. Almost always I prefer that newsprint, but man, whenever you see this level of detail, you don't want any dot gain. You want those lines to be crisp. So, a really interesting cartoonist, and again, we have a longer video in depth on him. Check that out, and check out your local comic shop dollar bins to see if you can uncover more gems of that nature. So here's our next one. This is Achilles Storm. There are 2 issues, and then it was reprinted in the late 90s, but this is an early 90s kind of a team-up book between Sandra Chang and Mark Beecham. Beecham, you guys may know from Continuity Studios. He had done like most of Samurai, I don't know how you pronounce that, but this is his forte, drawing these kind of almost Aeon Flux-like long women, and Sandra Chang, very similar in style. So there are 2 stories in here. They're not collaborating together. They're doing their own stories, but it's pretty sweet as a package, because I think their art is sympathetic, and as you'll see, this is, I described it to Ed before we start recording, it's sex and violence in the Outlaw tradition.
A part of Outlaw Comics is kind of the Canon Films aesthetic, man. Bad things are happening on wharfs and docks, and dudes with Uzis and power suits and slick back ponytails.
Yeah, a lot of that.
Some cocaine.
Look at that strange distortion going up our staircase, and she's just like foreshortening our figure completely.
Yeah, it looks so accurate, like it's probably from a photo, and then you got to try to make the background work from your weird distorted lens.
Drugs are another one that you'll see in a lot of these. I did not bring Mike Deodato's Razor Knights. We looked at that in a recent video, and I think it would qualify as an Outlaw comic, but because we just looked at it, it didn't quite make this cut.
The Beecham stuff, you feel the crusty bunker in there.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a pretty wild series, and I think all of these are series that I just randomly came across. Like, I don't know that any of this stuff were books that I knew about.
Sure, and that's the thing. Like, we're so deep into comics at this
Double
point.
lighting the ass.
Got to, man. We're so deep in comics at this point that, not to speak for you, but kind of just buy whatever I never saw before.
Yeah.
At a quarter, like, you're not really breaking the bank if it's a dud. But something like this, there's no question that goes home with you.
Yeah, there's almost like a level of how are you managing your ink? Like there's almost a professional level, and once you hit that, it's like, oh yeah, that got to get that. Because also, whenever you find this stuff in a 50-cent bin, you're not seeing it again. There's no guarantee that you're ever going to come across this again. So if it catches your eye, you pretty much got to take it home with you.
Speaking of eye catching, you're going to have to show off that back cover before you split with that. Whoa, look at that vaginal detente, frickin'.
Yeah, that whole
gimmick.
character, I was hoping we would get like a good shot of the whole costume because she has like the spike stud hood on top. How about that? If you can be fully clothed and be Outlaw, I feel like that's the costume.
Yeah, man.
Quite an attitude coming across on these pages. There you go, setting the tone.
Them little burgers right there, dude.
Not very inviting. Here's kind of a fun one. So Bodyguard and Aircell Comics, when I think Malibu had purchased Aircell at this point.
That's the cover format of Malibu.
But kind of cool, you get a Paul Galassi cover there, doing weird color treatment.
I mean, he's a weird dude. Like he really had that fastball, and then there is Galassi that just doesn't hold up.
So once you get inside, like right away you can see, oh yeah, that has your Outlaw ingredients with the crazy inks and veins and sweat popping out. Good stuff.
And this is licensed material.
But an introduction by the Todd father?
Maybe this. What's the year on this?
1990.
Yes. Okay. So it's cool to see that the Image guys already have some small relationship with Malibu. This stuff was reprinted from Australian Penthouse.
That answers a lot of questions, does it not?
Yeah.
So you see a pretty slick style of inking, pretty heavy on shadows, maybe a Tim Bradstreet light or something you might see there, and Penthouse makes total sense, right? It has that, I guess, more on the sex side of your Outlaw content than anything else.
It would speak for the margins at the top and bottom.
Yeah,
you know,
magazine size,
different format.
Absolutely, but very nice, pretty nice figure work, pretty high quality craftsmanship in my opinion. And I guess there were multiple issues, but this is the only one I ever saw. And the McFarlane intro just really, it's a whole package. You can see Malibu, how you get to that point. All right, so Gone Walkabout. Stephen Lewis Ryan. This is from 1996, and I think it's more or less self-published. You know, it's Dog on a Bone Studios and Primal Groove Press, but I feel like that's basically he's self-publishing, and maybe Brett Warnock pre-Top Shelf giving him a hand there. And this one, again, we talk about like the extreme inking kind of stuff. I hope this one's in focus because the detail of the ink marks, it feels like he must have drawn this at 3-up
Right.
and reduced it. Like everything is just these very, very tiny fine lines, hatching everything, making texture. Like even on this brick, at a distance, it almost looks like you're seeing a screen tone until you look closer and realize it actually they're getting darker as you go down because he's hatching them.
In almost all the stuff we looked at
Double
already,
hatching there.
Joe Coolman influence
Yeah.
has to be involved in at least a handful of these guys with these manic marks they're putting together.
Absolutely. And this story in particular, like I would add a psychedelic element,
Totally.
which kind of fits great on top of the Outlaw aesthetic. You know, just getting trippier and trippier as you kind of get into this specialty world. And he does these cool panels, right, where like the reality is dripping off into this other realm. And then how do you draw that stuff? So you get a lot of these like energy lines and playing with ink, you know, figuring out how to make that ink express this different world. Look at how great this is, from the overly muscular, like veiny neck into just the energy, that freaky energy. I talk about this a bunch. The idea that like you can draw, you know, a jagged line means something different to the eye than a smooth line. I feel like he's taking advantage of some of those ideas. And this guy, perfect for an Outlaw comic. A lot of blood and fluids too.
Yeah.
Between
man.
fingers.
Good drapery. Corbin is
Yeah, Corbin.
in here.
The rendering on the chains. I'm drawing chains on a current piece right now. That's a nightmare. You
Yeah.
do not want to get into this level of rendering on chain links.
I mean, just doing the links in any way other than the Todd McFarlane way is an ambitious proposition. I mean, the merit in that, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit distorted. Like, this is a guy who obviously can draw just berserk level of drawing, but you distort it a little bit. You know, you have your own little quirks that come across, and that's what I want.
Do you think it's conscious, or
I doubt
there?
it.
There is a thing, like, certainly when I was in art school, there were the guys that like they put certain things in front of other things. So like getting rendering down was more important than figuring out exactly how to draw a figure.
Yeah, I don't know.
And by the way, I'm in that category. You know what I mean? Like I don't take all the time in the world to worry about that part of it.
Yeah, I it's hard to tell. Like, I don't know that anybody. It feels like that's next level if you're able to like consciously maybe distort
Right.
in a way that adds to
Yeah, that's that Egon
world.
that Egon Schiele
right
type.
I have not
Aeon
met
Flux type shit.
too many comic book artists that I would give them that credit, but it's possible. So Warguard we've looked at a couple times. Viking Berserker, Sean Patty, and definitely you mentioned Corbin with our Gone Walkabout, but I mean like this one I think is even more so Corbin. Although this is issue 2, and I think he is becoming more of his own artist, as we go along. But you can still see some Corbin influence for sure. And I just delight with this stuff, and you're really seeing the pattern here of like how many marks can we put on a page before it's just solid black.
Oh yeah, and it's bravado, it's machismo. That's a part of the Outlaw thing too. It's like hyperbolic like masculinity. It's a part of Outlaw comics.
Yeah, there's a certain graduation of like I loved superhero comics when I was a kid that you can kind of move into this is your adult mature version of that. Mature maybe loosely used there, but it does feel like an extreme version of the values of a superhero comic. Even like Mike Mignola, although that's probably where Mike Mignola and Patty cross over at the Corbin with panels like some of these. But man, I dig this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing that I find in a lot of my favorite Outlaw comics is it's the drawing.
Yeah, totally. You can find these. Like I've seen these in many quarter bins and things.
Yeah,
and
these
not
exist.
not to be insulting to Sean Patty, because like it might hurt someone's feelings to know that they're in the quarter bin or whatever, man. But what I'm just saying is they are out there.
They are. It's funny that this is not a sought after book, because there are those books, the Ken Landgraf books. Like
Yeah.
New York City Outlaws is a you don't find a lot of those in a quarter bin anymore. I don't know why Warguard isn't in that kind of like cult status.
It is now.
It should be. It definitely should be. So, Cocaine Cowboy. I always have the fantasy of like, I'm going to do an 80s style book. I'm not going to tell anybody, and I'm just going to slip it in dollar bins as I'm out and about. Whenever I found this one, I thought Ben Mara might have pulled that on me.
Right.
Because this is a Ben Mara character, if I've ever seen the hair, the costuming.
Night Business Zero.
It really feels like, even that boot feels like it has all those sensibilities.
Like, if Ben was doing this, though, the foreshortening in that hand, it would be smaller.
Yeah, you're right.
Because he does that shot, man, but he fucking shrinks that hand
It's
so
amazing.
much.
Like a harpoon gun, as part of the props on the cover. And I gotta say, like, part of the reason is this is published, I believe, out of Miami. This is another.
It makes so much sense.
Hollywood, Florida. So not quite Miami, but this is Cocaine Cowboys as we know Cocaine Cowboys.
Yeah, which for the people at home, man, there are a couple documentaries you could see. I haven't had Netflix in years, but when I did have it, like one of the most exciting documentaries I saw on it
Yes.
was Cocaine Cowboys 1 and 2. And then you realize that GTA Vice City is totally inspired by the stories in Cocaine Cowboys, down to like the side quests that one can do, where they're dropping bales of fucking coke from airplanes out in the Atlantic Ocean with little radio beacons, and dudes on the back in boats with a giant fucking remote control, like
Yes.
honing in on those things.
I just saw the headline of they found like $500 million of cocaine floating in a crate in the Pacific Ocean.
So it showed up on the Explore page on Instagram. It was a bunch of boppy like college chicks on a boat, and they were like, "Look at this thing we found in the middle of the ocean," and all the comments are like, "Just leave right now! Like, just go away from that."
Really? That's how that showed up?
No. Like, I mean, it could be totally unrelated, but these girls found an accidental like. The guys who want that are coming to get it, and you shouldn't be there. Is basically what
Yeah.
everybody in the comments
That's a
was
movie.
saying.
I mean, I feel like that's 20 crime movies are that plot. Hey, you mentioned Night Business. I think this is a character right out of Night Business, by the way. So, set in Miami by Floridian creators, this feels like the perfect kind of what I hope for in an Outlaw comic, because it's almost like, hey, we like comics. Let's make our own. What do we know about? This is the story.
It's funny to use the word crude in this context because down to the subject matter it's crude, but there is like the drawers of Outlaw Comics. We've seen some of that with Sean Patty. We'll see some more with Ray Ness. But then there's like the Outlaw Comics where the actual drawing is very crude.
Yeah.
And those guys all build the faces the same way. It's really a fascinating thing. Like there's this like JV version of figure drawing that everybody draws the characters like with those same kind of eyes and everything. The equine horse face.
Yeah.
This is a more late period one, but like all the black and whites in the 80s that are reminiscent of what I'm describing, it was like it was like fourth tier, like Barry Windsor Smith. So like all the weird shit that Barry Windsor Smith did that made people excited, like they would incorporate into their drawing. So everybody had that horse face.
Yeah, 100% you're right. And I'm glad you mentioned those 80s comics because they're not Outlaw comics per se,
Yeah.
but that wave of like self-publishing where it's people's first comic, there's so much in common and I find it so charming.
Yeah.
And this book has a bunch of that. You know, like the couches that are just like you're ruler lining them.
Guides, man. Like you could see like, okay, perspective class 101, like put the vanishing point here and just fucking rule. Like look at the size of that stool.
It's so great.
And it's so wrong. Well, I guess if this is ground and then this is like sunk in, I guess there used to be those like little, they were called like conversation pits.
It's fantastic all around. The costuming on these guys, I love it all. And it's that early digital, you know, like I'm going to print out my lettering and then cut it out and paste it in place. Shades of like Silverwolf or something on there.
And you could bet that lettering is probably like a little green, a little gray, printed out on that paper with the dots on the side.
Would love to see an original page from this. But love it. It's one of those just, you know, it's an artifact is really what it is. But it's also 1992, so it may be some people that are looking at the comics landscape and taking advantage of what's out there.
Also, by the way, like a really well-commissioned logo for the subject matter, I would say, with the horseshoes intertwined.
Yeah, it's like that cowboy saloon-style lettering.
Yeah, it's really smart.
I love it, man. Hats off to that one.
They paid for that.
They did. Princess of Sadism. So this is kind of a one that you probably won't find in your dollar bins because this showed up in our mailbox. And I had not heard of it, you know, was completely unfamiliar with it. And let's see, I'm looking for contact information for this guy, and I don't see it very handy here. He has a Patreon, but the artist describes it as this is his first, I guess it's Pixel Face. This is his first or her first comic book. And sometimes I hate to show these off because whenever I'm super impressed by like somebody's first effort, it makes me mad a little bit. But as a first effort, like, this thing's beautiful. You know, I feel shades of manga in here, probably referencing, maybe even tracing some cityscapes. But whatever works, like, I'm just reading it. I just need it to look super cool.
Yeah.
And we've seen plenty of manga artists do this. That cat's cool. But our main character here is this Princess of Sadism. We're going to see her doing some stuff throughout this issue that makes it worthy of outlaw status. A lot of the black ink blood, a little bit of your sex and love in there. But this is kind of this, like, it's a bit of a tour de force, in my opinion, for a first-timer. They're all over the place. Big splash pages, sequential stuff, nice lettering. Probably, I see sprinkles maybe of Brendan Graham maybe as an influence in here a little bit. But it's just all over the place. Great action panel. Blows my mind that people show up with, like, their first effort, and this is what it looks like. That character design for, like, the creepy monster. Look at that thing. It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, this artist knows how to keep things interesting on the page, just for damn sure.
And again, we talk about how much ink do you get on your page. This is what big part of Outlaw Comics.
Big imagination.
Yeah.
Lots of imagination. This is a heck of a creator.
Yeah, it's one of those, try not to get us in too much trouble. It's one of those things, like, you never know what you're getting whenever you open up those envelopes and it's something you haven't seen before. That can take up a lot of different shapes. How about this, like going some advanced rendering? So, pretty wild stuff, and happy to show it off on here, you know, a little bit of mailbag stuck in the middle of this Outlaw 10, but worthy, I think, of being amongst these Outlaw comics.
Right.
So something for those fans of Outlaw comics, add Pixel Face to your list of potential outlaws.
Icon Devils are a revelation. to me when I first happened upon them, because you think you know it all, right? And then you're digging around in the quarter bins and you just happen upon this stuff and you see how accomplished it is. And then it's just like, well, who is this guy? Like, one of the things that I've always done when, my uncle, he primed the pump for me to be kind of agnostic in my comics loves, because he would just read weird shit. And I have, like, some of my favorite comics growing up are weird black and white comics with no irony. It's like the stories and stuff are just, I like them better. So like what I would do as I started to become more of a cartoonist and more like into the culture is you get your hands on a comic like this and it's a name that you don't recognize. You have to hit the Google machine and just see what these people are up to these days.
Yeah, I should have brought a piece in the early this is 1986, 1987 time period, and Neil Hansen here, story, art, and lettering, aka Spider.
Yeah.
Went through some indies, but whenever Epic tries to compete with Image and has like their heavy hitters line, does a book called Untamed that is probably near the apex of like how much detail, kind of violence, line work. You know, if you love hard boiled, check it out. Like really strong, polished stuff. There you go, man. The Icon Devil looking pretty strong there. So a long career. He also does a run on Whisper, Stephen Grant's Whisper. That's really beautiful artwork. He's very good, legit, you know, kind of mainstream talent. But it's so awesome that you have this stuff in his background where you can kind of like dig it up. This painting, by the way, I don't know how well it'll show up. Super cool, but they would do this sometimes where they would stretch like inside front and back covers.
Gotta get 2 copies.
And that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Gotta rip out the guts and put that up on your dorm room wall.
How wild is that though for a cover?
We have these guys in comics. Troy Nixie comes to mind. Even before Bill the Clown, there was I think Prey was a very much outlaw comic.
Yeah.
Which will probably be on another list that we do, because with every piece that we're showing and looking at, I already am compiling the list of the next 5, and Zone Continuum would be on that. Prey comics would be on that.
Yeah, I have spent so much time trying to gather these kinds of comics, and now they're folded into my collection, so it's so hard, like, off the top of my head to remember them. But I would also ask, like, the kayfabers out there, man,
yes.
add in the comments, because the other thing is you mentioned, like, how they're regional, and sometimes you just don't see them. One of the fun things of traveling and then checking out local comic shops when you travel is that that's where you'll find the local talent that may not have made it back here, you know, to our shops or to your shops. But we can, with the internet, we can make a list in these comments sections. So let's start sharing some of the Outlaw comics that are your favorites at home. Like, put those in the comments. Maybe they'll make the next list.
That's the other thing too, man. Like when we go on our travels, like we always meet like the cool guy in that town that has like the great collection and makes comics themselves, and they just don't necessarily have that extra kink to their personality that requires that they put their stuff out into the wider universe.
I feel like you can really see Hansen growing from issue to issue. You know, like at this point, like he's really like, I don't know if confidence is the right word, but man, these pages feel like they're just dripping with that early enthusiasm that creators have. And especially as you start to get those pages that like, oh, I like how this one turned out. I have this idea that I can do. Like, that's wild stuff. Yeah, this is pretty cool. And we're just scratching the surface on Outlaw Comics too. So definitely add some of your own favorites at home, because we'll get back to this.
Yes.
Like I said, this is always one of my favorite subjects. And there's a lot out there that I don't know and haven't seen yet, so help us out. Fuckator, Jason Carnes, and my name is inside of this book because I helped put this together for Fantagraphics Underground. I did not dig out Carnes's mini comics, but I will for a future episode, because the way that I found his stuff,
get its own episode.
Absolutely. The way that I found his stuff is he would make these as mini comics, printed on newsprint, hand printed, like huge inspiration to me whenever I found them. Colors them with markers. I mean, I think he's one of my favorite cartoonists working, because he's doing all this on the page. Yeah. I have some originals of his too that we'll do an in-depth episode, and I'll bring those out and we can look at like the coloring, the lettering. But it is just a specific type of like B-movie, you know, exploitation, splatter, punk kind of style. Nobody makes comics like this. And again, he's doing all of this on the page. I love it. I wish there was. I wish he was one of many that work this way. Unfortunately, he's it. But hey, man, happy to have him. And I just love every part of his comics. Like,
yeah, man.
The color, the design, the lettering. You know, leaving that white, like that's done in the coloring stage. He's coloring this in with red markers. He may be going back in and touching up the white with some white media. I'm not sure, but it's planning that kind of like, ooh, how do we make this look wet and bloody and a little bit 3-dimensional? All done on the page.
Yeah, man. Jason Carnes with a K is his name, and you can find him on social media. And he's lately been posting videos while in the middle of the process, so you get to see him putting those marker tips down. Remember, dude? I asked Robert Kirkman on the shoot interview, man, like, what'd you think of Faust? Because of The Walking Dead, like the glory.
Yeah.
He's like, I just ain't down with several penises, man.
That's a short list.
I draw the line at the several penises in my comical books, he says.
That's amazing. The stuff that Carnes is drawing from too, like, I think this is like a cop, you know, that doesn't play by his rules. So you mentioned Canon earlier, Ed. This is the Canon films, but with like an NC-17 level of just absurdity. You know, commandos fighting Nazi monsters. There's sci-fi trope, you know, like is this the ultimate mad scientist?
Straight out of Central Casting.
High octane action with SWAT. You know, you see the SWAT team moving in with just, again, R-rated or NC-17 rated kind of violence.
Great lettering.
Oh, the lettering's phenomenal. It's a crime that he's not won an Eisner for lettering, quite frankly. I mean, it's phenomenal. I don't know anybody that letters this well. Even like the word balloon lettering, super great.
Right, because that is not just like writing a character down. Like, that is drawing. You know, he's drawing the lettering.
Yeah, and he does these. This is kind of like, you know, issue cover here. So he makes these as your ash can size, like 5.5 by 8.5. They're full color, like I said. He's custom printing them himself. They're perfect objects.
Yeah,
like they're really. When I found them, it was just like my brain exploded.
When you put this book together, were you just scanning in your copies? Mm-hmm. Did he send you artwork?
He sent me the artwork.
Amazing.
Yeah. This should not be out of print, by the way. So, you know, Gary, if you're watching, I don't know why it's out of print. I don't know if that's a Carnes choice, a Fantagraphics choice, if it's just they publish a bunch of books and randomly it's gone out of print. But I know there's some demand for it. Saw it in France whenever I was over there for Angoulême, looking in shops and stuff, found copies of it there. So I'm glad to see his audience grow a bit, but I think there's a much bigger audience still out there because most of those comics, if you want them, you're getting them directly from him. And
it's a process.
That's a small group.
I mean, it's literally a headache to him. I think he's not doing it anymore. Like, he's not selling the old stock because he prints them up on a bubble jet. Like it's very expensive to make. Basically, it's time equity. It's toner that's like super expensive.
Maybe the only color Outlaw that we looked at today.
Yeah.
But, you know, you can see that obsession with craft. Like, you can see the amount of effort that he's putting in there. A fun follow on social media, because I think all he posts are, like, his works in progress. So you get to see those pages, sometimes even a video of him coloring a little bit, stuff like that. I can't say enough about it. You know, really outstanding work. So here we go with number 10. This is Rain Ness. And known for Damlog, this is probably how I first discovered his work. These editions, I believe, have the same contents. It's funny because, like, they're slightly reworked. You know, like the lettering is different, but you can see it's the same artwork, just maybe updated for a new edition. And what's crazy is this is Acid Rain Studios. They're out of, like, I want to say, like, South Bend, so where Notre Dame is, the American Notre Dame, the college,
right.
not France. Acid Rain Studios did some other books, including one called Vampire Wars, which is really cool. It looks like it's drawn with like a rollerball pen.
Right.
It could probably qualify as potentially as an Outlaw comic. But this guy, he's another one of those revelations. He was also in Barbaric Tales, an anthology, and he's in an issue or two of that, but it's Damlog material. So if you find Damlog, you'll get all of the Damlog stories, at least that I'm aware have been published so far.
When you see these pages, don't you think that they must have been drawn gigantic?
Yeah, I do. And it's another one of those guys where, like, you can pull out a lot of interesting looking covers from a 50-cent bin. When you open it and see this level, I can't think of another book. Like, this is a guy who's putting absurd amounts of effort on that page. So wild stuff. Filling it with ink.
With a name like Ray Ness, like, doesn't it just evoke some kind of Scandinavian
I think he is.
outlaw
I'm pretty
cartoonist?
sure. Look at this final battle. So good, right? I mean, and there's even a monster like watching from behind as these titans square off. You know, I love this stuff too. Like for the hallway, just all of these parallel lines. It's that pattern, you know, like it just fits with a black and white comic where you can really play with that stuff.
Yeah, it becomes a great texture.
Absolutely. Wires coming out of an eye socket. So you get Damlog and you're like, oh, what else has this dude done, right? This is the other comic that I'm aware of from Rain Ness. North Star Publishing, who did some Faust and definitely did some Outlaw comics. And this is a slightly newer than Damlog, so... You know, I don't know whether that means more effort or more refined or whatever. Like pretty smooth to begin with. But again, you can see like,
oh my goodness,
the attention to inking and obsession.
The stuff of nightmares.
It really is.
Like this will cure. Like, you know how they have those like fucked up like gay rehabilitation camps. Like this will be the furry rehabilitation camp. Like for all those kids that are down with those the costume gimmicks, man. Give them this comic, and then you're going to set them on a different path.
Part furry, and then also like David Icke, lizard people.
Yeah.
Mythology, Queen Lazilia.
It's also very much like the bird-headed chicks and exactly Robert Crumb comics, really.
Yeah, it's the level of like draftsmanship and craft is so freaking high. It might be as high as any black and white kind of self-published book that I can think of. You know, it's I think it's on a level with Faust in terms of just, you know, precision of what you're doing with your ink line and everything. The fact that it's so bizarre just adds to that.
True, because there's the component of pencil mileage, ink mileage. Like each of these pages might take a week.
Yeah.
So like, it's a very specific subject matter to spend that much of your life on. Look at that. They call that well, never mind. Never mind.
That's bad when it doesn't even fit on an Outlaw episode.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So now we've got the Pigman showing up. I don't know what to make
dude,
of it.
and there's that exit song also.
There it is.
The outro tune. Dude, there it is, man.
The name of the song, You Came.
I mean, this is Outlaw. It's really bad though.
Look, it's like half chains and half intestines. The drawing of what he's holding there.
He's a cannibal. Like I have the paperbacks of Chain Gang, and it's like a die cut cover. You know, let me just grab it real quick. Just you'll have to do a little editing into it, because I think I know exactly where my Chain Gang is. And splatterpunk novels are outlaw novels, you know. Check this shit out.
Oh man, the source material. Look at how far out they go to do a die cut cover. Wow.
Isn't it amazing?
You can see how this lends itself to comics, especially a North Star comic, known for horror, known for splatter, and you get a Stephen King quote on an ad. That's going for it, man.
Yeah, see, Slob is the first book, and then Chain Gang is the second. But Chain Gang is the name of the guy in Slob. And Jimmy, if you could just read this one part. Okay, yeah. Just that statement. That's like the greatest elevator pitch for the book.
The beast was very hungry. He felt clear-headed for the first time since he'd been given his freedom, really strong, coming awake with a roaring hunger. He wanted real food. Then he wanted a heart.
Isn't it amazing?
Chain Gang is coming to town.
So so in the first one, he's just this crazed serial killer going off doing his thing.
500 pounds of pure murder.
Right. And he's caught. He's captured. And it becomes a thing of like, we're going to weaponize this fuck. We're going to like drill into his head a little bit, put a helmet on him, screw with him so that he's a soldier. And we're going to like drop him off into a town with like an area of effect. Like if he gets out of the perimeter, like he just can't or something. You know, there's some mental fence or something. And of course he gets out. Of course he gets out and fucking just does his thing.
That's an amazing story, though. I mean, that's almost like your monster kind of stuff, right? That's Jurassic Park, right? The T-Rex is getting off the island or something.
And it's
so comic booky.
It's a test. Like why don't you test it on like maybe an orphan boy that doesn't have any like family and he's skinny and can't do much? No, you hook Chain Gang up with that.
Yeah, right. Doesn't it seem like a superhero? It's like a cross between Captain America and Luke Cage.
Yeah. That's the cool thing about those splatterpunk books, man.
All right, so last piece of Rain Ness, we had a kayfaber send this in a couple years ago, an early mail call, and this is a North Star production, Alien Females from Rain Ness. So I never got too into these. These were kind of before my time. I feel like that was an 80s staples doing portfolios. But the paper is this coated stock. So you've got this guy who's doing super fine ink lines, and there's no dot gain. Like, you're getting like this precise kind of stuff reproducing. They probably told him that, and it's like lean into that detail and obsession. And I guess subject matter, because these are twisted nightmares.
Like, I just wonder if, you know, if you do some Freedom of Information Act thing on North Star, like, do they have a file? Because this feels...
The FBI's watching
like,
them.
I don't think J. Edgar Hoover would approve.
Yeah, Dolphin. Mermaid Nightmares would be another one. I love this design where we have like a Cyclops bench pressing. Wild. And then like a robot.
Yeah, the robot almost reminds me of that end piece in Hard Boiled.
Yeah, look at how you're getting like a couple of these screens on here. Like just a round dot screen slapped on the side of the robot skull.
Yeah, along with dry brush and gray tones and stuff, just putting stuff down. It feels like pinball machine back glass.
So much like Centaur. I love that backdrop.
And I feel like Centaur is inspired by Tim Truman, by the way,
Interesting.
specifically.
That's real interesting because I feel like it fits in this stuff too.
Yeah,
pinball's a good pool, I think. Check out how this works though, like how detailed this brimstone road is back to like a devil, a minotaur coming out of the mouth of hell there. You know, it's
getting the perspective right. It's amazing.
So much onto these pages. Like he really seemed like he responded to the idea of, portfolio, let me go for it.
The lettering is different on all. Mm-hmm. It does feel like the primitive piece to his process, but it works with the style.
Look at those nails.
There's a naivete to the lettering.
There is. There is the pinball thing, the Outlaw quality where like it's just distorted enough to be unique.
Yeah.
You know, and it has that quality of like, this is the dude that... This thing is a nightmare, by the way, the Humpty Dumpty one.
Yeah, that's too much, man.
Yeah. It really
and you know what, guys, let's make this a feminist icon because it's the ovum, you know? Like, that's like the seed.
Wow.
And it looks, it's very big and strong.
Super disturbing. It's just all super disturbing. But the amount of detail that he's putting in there, you know, like as somebody who does ink drawings, it's hard to look at this and not be just blown away by it.
It's true. And like part of like thinking that it's just drawn so gigantic is you can't see any like real kind of, you know that it's done with a hand, but you don't see any wobble. You don't see any evidence of that hand really anywhere.
Yeah, and it's a short list of creators that have that kind of ink control. You know, we talk about like Bolin and Charles Burns with that, but it is that kind of like I struggle to find the word. It's precision, it's accuracy, but it's a consistency that's borderline machine-like.
And you can cheat it if you draw very big, because that's some of the benefits of the reduction process is that it tightens up the wobbles a bit.
Yeah. So just a wild document. It makes me curious about other portfolios. You know, Tim Vigil has several of those over the years. I'd be curious to kind of like check some of that stuff out. But this is Rain Ness's Alien Females.
There it is, man. Top 10 hidden gems in Outlaw Comics. Jimmy, you want to construct your thumbnail image?
Yeah, let me put one together
for this thing, man. While we vamp at the very end here, because these are comics that you might find some. But at the very least, you should be encouraged to go dig around in those bins.
That's the takeaway I hope everybody does.
See what you pull out.
Yeah, absolutely.
You might come up with some really crazy shit. You might blow our fucking minds.
That's the thing. You know, these are comics that people, they pass to us. Every now and then they talk about it whenever we go to shows or something. Everybody has their favorite versions of these things. So, yeah, add to the comments, and also hit up your local stores and see what they've got collecting dust in the background.
If I was to do some editorialization, I would say that
Please.
Damn Lug is fairly iconic. It should be kind of front and center beyond kind of this thing. That's my big note with that, man.
Look at Cocaine Cowboys. All right, man.
Testosterone in a thumbnail. Good to go?
I am.
Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell. We'll notify you when new vids are available. Tell the people what's out there, Jimmy.
Hulk Grand Design in stores very soon, if not already. Street Angel, Deadliest Girl Alive, and Princess of Poverty coming soon. The Plain Janes are my latest books. You can also join me on patreon.com/JimRugg, where you can see lots more of my art and comics. You can download out-of-print zines and minis, and you can see what I'm working on now.
Red Room Crypto Killers issue 1 is being offered to your comic shops right at this very moment. Please hit your comic shop up, put it on your pre-order list, put it on your pull list. Each issue completely self-contained. There are two trade paperbacks of Red Room out there in the wild right now. The Antisocial Network and Trigger Warnings. I'm serializing the new Red Room stuff on my Patreon, patreon.com/EdPiscor. It's the 10th anniversary of Hip Hop Family Tree. Scoop up those comics. 3 volumes of X-Men Grand Design and WYSIWYG are out in the wild. Helps keep the lights on in the studio here. Jimmy, what else do we have out in the wild?
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe e-newsletter at the links below this video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts and merchandise and mugs and fanny packs and more at our spread shop. That link is also below this video.
Another great way to support the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel. Give them those marching orders and we'll be on our way.
Read more comics.
Oh my goodness. You know what, Jimmy? I feel so much better right now. Like, guys, I was like fucking had the worst headache.
Dude, hit a record for 1 second.
Oh, yeah.
Act like we're talking or whatever. I'm just getting a still shot. Go ahead, that's good.
Okay.
Thanks. Well, that's good.
Yeah, that never happens. But literally a headache woke me up.
Oh,
and I'm like, what the fuck is this bullshit, man? But it's completely gone. So I feel 100% now, man. But there were people in the comments like, man, Ed looks like he needs more coffee. Ed, I'm like, I'm dying here. I want to like close my eyes and jab him with fucking pencil.
That's the worst. It sucks so bad on a work day. You know, like any other day
Never
this week,
happens.
you could at least sort of like get that extra couple hours of sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
One day you got stuff scheduled.
Yep, but I'm so good right now, man. It totally went away.
Excellent.
Just in time to do some recording.
I am psyched to see feedback from people on that video.
Yeah,
and
me
learn
too.
about some new comics, man.
Like because
Self-serving.
Because I ain't gonna lie, man. There's still a kayfabe effect to that part because we see the comments before anybody.
That's true. Yeah. It's probably you know, that's what I end up filling out these like when I go to my comic shop once a year or so.
Right, yeah.
That's the accumulation of like, oh, what do they have? And the truth is, a lot of this stuff, it's not there. It ends up you know, the stuff is obscure.
Yeah.
Some of it's doesn't even get an entry, let alone be available. But it's one more resource to look for it. And one more fun thing whenever we get talking to Comics Pro about the kind of stuff that they have in their back rooms and basements, and it's almost throwaway stuff, I feel like, when people buy collections, because it's not like any of this stuff is usually worth anything.
It always operates that way. Certainly when we visit a shop, because they're like, just take it. Like we don't give a fuck about this.
Yeah, I mean, look, most of it really, I don't think that it's worth much, but I love it. So it's funny when we talk about like Mike Royer being our inker because that was the guy we could afford Kirby comics from. In a weird way, like a lot of these Outlaw comics, it's the same deal. You know, like they're cool looking comics and you can get them for $1 or $2.
I'm just seeing this
Oh, good.
Fishu texted me for the first time.
Yeah, it's coming together.
Yeah, dude, I can't wait. Jimmy's working on a new Red Room cover. the chat, Jimmy. So do we just have 2 more comics?
That's it.
And then it's going to be the Eastman and Laird stuff. And by the way, like, I don't have any texts about colds or sicknesses or anything like that.
Good.
In fact, here's. We're in comics now, Jimmy. Here's the list, man. Like, I got a text from Peter Laird, Kevin Eastman, then Jeff Darrow. And then a couple down from that is Klaus Janson.
You could have saved me years of depression as a kid if you'd have told me all this stuff.
I know what you mean,
Whenever
man.
I was like 14.
And you know, it's tax time now. And me and Jimmy, like, we formed a company for Cartoonist Kayfabe, and that's a different kind of process, like having a partnership thing. And I just realized that, like, nearly 100% of the things I do on a daily basis for fun are also the things that make the loot. And the gratitude that just, like, washed over me, man, is just, like, it's endless.
Yeah.
Endless gratitude, man. Got to thank you guys so much for supporting these crazy projects that
very true.
we're putting together, man, because it's just really working out what's happening.
The artist of Red Room just said that a Humpty Dumpty drawing is too much. Can't wait to see it from another angle.
Yeah, man. Like, dude, if you want to just pull that out and show the guys, man, they're the people in the chat.
That's funny. I will do that. I will reward them. Give them some early nightmare fuel.
Telling you guys, man, it's a new feminist icon.
Yeah.
It's the ovum, and then it would be the song from Married with Children when they go to the feminist rally. My eggs, my beautiful eggs. And then maybe even in the voice of Edie, the egg lady from Pink Flamingos. Oh, my eggies.
Somebody needs to make that a meme. Only about 5 of us will enjoy it, but we'll enjoy it a lot.
Oh, my eggies. So I'm going to call Zap Comix 0 the original Outlaw comic. What you think about that? That's part of my thesis.
It's a wild comic, man.
Yeah, 2 more vids. We're going to do Zap 0. We're going to do Elfquest 1. This Elfquest 1 is very, very important to me, Jimmy.
Jabba said, yeah, I'm excited for Elfquest 1. This is my first time reading Elfquest this week.
Yeah.
And it's so much better from a craft level than whatever I was... It's self-published. I assumed it was going to be like everybody else's, early on and kind of rough. Boy, Wendy Peeney can draw.
She really can.
Jabba said that the guys that published Chillville also published this comic called Lobster Man, which he sent me a set of, and I almost included in this batch. Will probably be in our next Outlaw stuff, but it's another Maine comics creator. It must be something in the water in Maine, because I've seen a few comics come out of Maine, and they all look good.
There are lobsters in Maine.
Yes, that too.
So that's just like this guy's expressing his own horrors and shit?
It could be. It's not the same artist, but it's an interesting looking comic, and it's fun that it's like we find each other, comics makers.
Hey Jabba, how about a set of those, man? You don't like me?
I forget what he sent them with. That might have been the main thing in that shipment, but yeah, Jabba hooks me up, man.
I'll keep that in mind.
He also says when you were talking about feeling better, comics is the cure-all. It's just the all. Just underline all.
Yeah, certainly for us.
There's a digital copy of Fuckator, according to them. I wish I would have known that. I could have said that on the video for everybody at home.
Can you lock me in, James?
For only $10. So, yeah, if anybody's not seen Fuckator, it's real strong comics. Do you want to... This, you can show that if you want to at some point.
Yeah, very cool. One of the things I wonder, because I do have this, is it squashed?
You know what? This looks like they drew this narrow, because you've got a wider margin.
like on regular comic paper or whatever, regular comic dimensions, and they just chose... It's probably cheaper to do this size, because like every cut is a cost.
Hey, let me see one thing real quick.
with Elfquest, it's only 20 issues of the first series, and like after reading this, like I want to check it out. But also, for you guys who were here last week, we were preparing for Klaus Janson, and we're going to do Punisher 1 and 2, and we will do that with him in some weeks. We got some great stuff lined up for you guys on the channel the next couple of weeks. And I have a lot of ideas of new other guys I want to get on the channel. But reading those Punisher comics, I'm very interested in like reading so much more. I have so much more of that Mike Baron stuff. But I got on board with War Journal almost immediately as a kid. Like that Jim Lee stuff. Like it was like he was set up to be a superstar. Like that stuff was everywhere. Just Mike Baron is so good. Like it's porn for like those like conservative dudes. You know, like they get to express all of their real fears and shit like that, and it comes off great in comics. Like in an ideal world, you would like handle that in comics and then be reasonable of a human being and shit like that. But it just works really, really well.
It's real interesting because it's a lot of these comics, when we go back and read them now with some perspective and just, I don't know, seeing trends and periods, that Punisher stuff's almost like, well, how do you make a homicidal killer, a slasher character? How do you do like the comics formula where it's like a different bad guy and a different scenario? And Baron, he's like, he has that skill. Like, he can write a regular comic. Like, he understands that formula. So it's like putting the superhero formula onto the Punisher is so bizarre.
But what he also is doing is ripping stuff directly from the news. Mm-hmm. So, like, in those first couple issues, and we'll do it with Klaus, man, but, like, the quote-unquote Batarang that, the rap song, the Toddy T rap song was made from, man, were, like... like Daryl Gates and the LAPD like had like literal tanks that they would just fucking bash into people's homes of suspected drug use. Like they smashed houses incorrectly.
Yeah.
At times.
When you're a hammer, everything's a nail.
Dude, they spray painted smiley faces on the end of that Batarang. Like they were fucking jerking off all over the place. Of course they were. Playing around with this tank.
And by the way, if that was my vehicle, I would too.
But that Daryl Gates, I mean, he's the chief when Rodney King happens. Like, just like long history of bad shit. But then there's the Wills issues with the poison pill Tylenol shits. Like they do that story. So I'm so curious to see like all the stuff that Mike Baron is kind of exercising from the stuff that he's reading in the news and all that. Because like even in that issue, it's done wrong. Like. There's a drug addict. We now see a drug addict as a bit of a victim, even though it's like their proactive choice. They did that stuff, but the Punisher is like, you fucking crackhead, you fucking crackhead piece of shit, and it's wild to read in a comic book, man.
Yeah, it's I never even thought about the Punisher in that way. The idea of like, because all these writers, if you listen to like. How to write or read a book on it. It's read everything, keep up with, look at the newspapers, and you can see it. It's almost a snapshot of like what's going on.
Yeah, because also...
especially pre-internet, because then you're really getting like, especially big news stories.
Yeah.
We're all seeing the same thing in 1985.
Totally. And it's got elements of that Frank Lucas American Gangster shit with like Vietnam veterans bringing shit back through military...
Vietnam
channels.
Was in every single thing I consumed as a child.
Sure.
The legacy of Vietnam.
Real close. Yeah, still real close, man. I got a couple purple-hearted uncles who are out of their mind, out of control.
I read, I went, like, in high school, I was so into all that stuff. Like, I'd read, like, first-person memoir stuff of, like, Navy SEALs and Green Berets and stuff. And one of them is named Frank Miller. And his story is holding off, like, one or two platoons of VC while he had walked into an ambush with his platoon, so it was basically he was the last guy standing, using everybody's guns and grenades to hold off like enemies on both sides all night long until there could be an extraction in the morning where he gets down to like 2 grenades left, the last clip, and then like the helicopter comes in. He wins Purple Heart for it. But it is that's the other element I think with Baron and those Punishers are like the paperbacks, like the men's adventure paperbacks.
Yeah, Remo Williams and shit.
Yes, and those lines blur so much with some of those war paperbacks. It's the same. It could almost be fiction in that it's like it's really purple and it's selling to the same audience.
Yeah.
And I bet the successful ones, or maybe not the successful ones, but some of them are just right in line with like it goes from Remo Williams to Frank Miller, the Green Beret, Purple Heart.
The superhero part of that shit though is like with that Punisher stuff. I can't wait to talk about that with Klaus. Is like now we have to spend a couple of panels in this other country, and Frank Castle has a flak jacket on, and he just needs to use some of the house paint to like paint a skull on the flak jacket because it's still a fucking Marvel comic. Also,
got a license to preserve kids.
Also, the amounts of like weapons caches he has laying around not only the city that he lives in, which I think is New York, but I think there's a part where he's like in El Salvador or whatever. He's like, I gotta go to my secret weapons cache. So like he's got like just little lockers of machine guns everywhere in the world, in every big city. He's got like a little bit of an arsenal.
That is such a staple of like the bullshit action movie genre. Like there's safe houses everywhere.
But then even like as a kid, right? It's like, okay, man, so he just bought a lot of guns and did that maybe use like drug money. But then like if you're at like Dick's Sporting Goods and you see what a fucking gun costs, it's like he's got $4 million worth of guns hidden around the place,
It's very true. The gun stuff was an ingredient though.
Yeah.
Because they would do all those armories. There's so many of those freaking Punisher armories. And I bought many of them and would draw that stuff.
Totally.
And if you go to like the supermarket and they have their little magazine section, it's still like gun magazines are still like one of the last 5 types of magazines that are published.
I would buy those things for the reference shots. Like I there was a time when I could draw a hell of a Mac 10. Straight from the head. And that's going to be a Klaus question. Like I'm going to ask him like, Klaus, like, okay, so you get the assignment. Like you just go down to the newsstand and go buy a bunch of guns and ammos and shit, right? I was looking at some
the morgue files. All those dudes must have had like a morgue file drawer that was just hardware,
and it was easy because like,
that was their safe house.
Like, it makes you wonder if you had a subscription to like Guns and Ammo or like Soldier
of
Fortune.
Man, that's weird.
Like how's it different? Because like they all look the same to me.
Yeah, no doubt about that. It's
and you got lots of good side views and shit.
They used to be like they would make replica toy guns like that because I had a Mac 10 replica and I'd want it might have been a Mac 11 because it had like the silencer on it and like a stock that would fold back. Looked pretty darn accurate to me based on Invasion USA.
Yeah.
And I had one kid in my neighborhood because living out in rural, and all we do is watch Red Dawn and then take our replica guns and run around in the woods like AK-47s, but they looked pretty good. Like you could
I know exactly the
certainly
kind,
at like newsprint level house style comics, they'd be perfect for reference.
Yeah, somebody in the comments will know. It's something Tech is the name of the company that made like those like super rad machine guns.
Yeah.
Like I had an M16 one, and it would have that good feel like when you pull the trigger.
Yeah.
But then I was certainly way more sentient, and it was or when like Phil Donahue and the Geraldo show was a thing, where like young boys started getting fucking killed by cops, and then that term suicide by cop got coined in like 89 or something, because like adult men were like taking those guns and like brandishing them and like having cops kill them and stuff like that. So like that's like when the orange nipple thing comes up. To me, that's like when you're looking for the dividing line of like Gen X millennial. Like if you have the NES that has the orange zapper, you're a millennial.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you get the gray and you had some guns that didn't have the orange nipple, like that's Gen X energy, man.
Yeah, that was around. That was probably I was the end, I think, of the guns that looked like the real guns.
I would be the end.
Okay.
Yeah, because that shit was still coming out in the 80s. You got 5 years on me.
And I was probably looking at them, like you'd go through the toy store or whatever, and you'd see them, and it was like, oh, you'd start to see like the color stuff on there. There was also television commercials for a water gun line that was like very accurate looking guns, and one of them was an RPG, and I can remember the dude like pulling out with that thing, and I mean it was right out of Rambo.
Is it Entertech guys. Like it's something tech. It's the water pistols that are the something something tech.
Whenever when I did the ad zine,
Yeah.
my favorite ad was for an M16 replica, and it was from like 1967. Like it would have been like Vietnam War era ads, and it was the little 6 or 7 year old with the gun and the machine gun sounds, and it was like, this is literally the gun that Americans are carrying into Vietnam,
right?
And then selling it to like a 7-year-old on the back of a comic book.
Totally, and
wild stuff.
I had that. It was I had like when I am spawned, and when I'm first conscious, I have a lot of shit. Like I had, because like my pops is the third born of a family of 8, and he was one of the last to start having kids.
Yeah.
So I just inherited all kinds of shit. I had all the LGNs from the second I was born. Like I just had all this stuff, and I had that M16 joint, man. That
it's crazy to me to think of when you go like, comics get neutered to be like kids comics, you know, with the comics code, and then the back cover is like the replica machine gun, which we're all fine with. But you can't have, you know, a werewolf. Marv Wolfman isn't allowed to write comics under his given name because of the comics code.
Yeah, that feels so American.
It's something, man. It's something. All those toy guns are sort of like the counterpart of all the car models, because you'd have like Detroit, you know, with their new line of cars, and then you'd have like the models, so that the kids could keep up with the auto industry before they're ready to drive or buy a car. But here's the new model that they can build at home and be super car enthusiasts long before they even start driving. There was a gun version.
Right, you totally, dude. There is a. I have seen a conspiracy theory online. See, I'm glad we have just like such a little private chat here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I don't know if any of this stuff this is okay to talk about.
But like I've read conspiracy theory stuff of if you think about like G.I. Joe Real American Hero comes out in like 82, and 2001, you're 18, 19 years old. You're ready to go. You're that age, man. So there was like there's talk about how, you know, that's like priming the pump, like G.I. Joe Real American
all
Hero,
of those.
priming the pump for boys my age to go serve.
It's hard not to see that, you know. So many, like all my favorite movies in the 80s, they're all that stuff. They're all like the call to arms. Like, sign me up to go fight Predator in the jungle.
Yeah.
I'm 18.
Yeah.
Give me the face paint and the
oh my goodness,
big Bowie knife.
I didn't talk about this on the channel because I was just so, man. I don't even ever want to watch that shoot from this morning because I was out of my mind. But
I couldn't believe some of that stuff you were saying.
Yeah, right. I finished the first. There's 4 arcs of Fist of the North Star, the anime. And the first arc is 22 episodes, and I finished that last night, and it was so fucking satisfying and just extremely rad, man. There was that, I sent you the link. I don't know if you got a chance to see it yet. But I got that from that one Alaban dude. Alaban, like the dude that is doing manga. He sent that shit off to me.
We need to talk to him.
We do absolutely, man.
Alberon.
Alberon,
yeah.
Yeah. And talking with the Fist of the North Star people, the real value of that documentary, on top of just like Fist of the North Star kind of porn, is you see the substantive contribution that the editors have in Japanese manga, and the respect because of that that contribution. Like, the creative team, they listen, and the editor is completely selfless in the production of the comic, and is like the facilitator. What do you need? Here, I'll pose for you. Like, shit like that. Like, at every level, to just like try to make the raddest comic. And the guy who was their editor really saw something in Haratetsu, who was like 21 at the time. Saw something in him early and gave him a couple shots. None of it was hitting, but it was like when NBC got hold of David Letterman, and they tried him in like 5 different places because they're like, you got it, but we just need to find what it is. And they arrived at the Fist of the North Star stuff. But I was going somewhere with that. But that editor, so he was a junior editor, just getting some responsibility. And then Shonen Jump becomes the thing. And in that documentary, they really cite Fist of the North Star as being the piece. I always thought it was like Dr. Slump, because Dr. Slump was so successful and it was earlier. But it comes out in 84. when Dr. Slump is still hitting, Kinnikuman is still in there, Cobra still in there, and then it's Fist of the North Star. So like that is like the other magazines are corny. Like the other magazines have to catch up. Wow. But then this editor,
can you imagine reading that stuff like weekly?
I know, man. Like I got a bunch. Like and eventually, like I'm gonna always do that. I'm gonna always grab at least 12 issues every time I go to Japan, ideally 24, and send them back. And at one point there will be the room of just like the Shonen Jumps or like the weeklies because they're so fucking cheap. But that junior editor rose through the ranks, became editor-in-chief, and I don't know how we frame this conversation on the channel, but 1992 in Japanese comics was the high water mark in the same way as it was here in America. So it's like just the time was right in the universe for comics to be extremely popular. And on the documentary, they say it hit 6 million a week was the highest number for Shonen Jump.
Just thinking about that in terms of, you ever see where to be like, this is what $1 million looks like, and it's a big pile of money. 6 million of phone books.
Yeah.
A week.
Yeah, that's the other thing, dude. Like you see them coming off the printing presses in a couple of B shots or whatever they call it, the B roll. Wow. You see them just coming off the thing. It's an island. Now there's 126 million people there. Like back then there were less. So it would probably be, 5% of the population is reading Shonen Jump.
That's incredible to think about. Looking with your knowledge, does anything look like Fist of the North Star before Fist of the North Star?
No, and they cite it. They cite it in.
That's what's really interesting to me is whenever something shows up and it's legit different, and it becomes a hit.
Yeah.
Because like I live in a post Fist of the North Star world.
True.
Like there were video games when I was pretty young.
Yeah.
The anime came, around then probably. Even the manga was here in the 90s, the first go with it. So it's sort of like, okay, that makes sense. And in the American comics, I feel like kind of big dudes fighting, like there's a place for that. But it feels so different when I look at various manga. And like, if that's really the beginning of that, like, what a radical, like, new piece.
Totally. And think about what that is. Now, I'll tell you the sad part about the documentary. Haratetsuo was blind in his right eye, and it cites it as being so focused on doing that weekly comic at that rigorous level, because that's the piece. Like, a lot of people can draw super detailed, physically accurate characters and cool poses. Now do 17 pages of that a week at that high level, even with some assistance. Plus Haratetsu was doing all the extra art, like the color work for all the sort of preamble pages and the posters and the books. Like, that's all him. That is a heck of a workload, and I think it's so funny because like me and Juan were talking about it afterward because he started getting paranoid. I'm paranoid, and then just some other friends throughout the week talk about they're having like some eye pain and shit. And I'm just like, you got to remember to blink. Like, because I think a lot of that is that. Like, Jeff Smith put that thought into our heads, like, where he's sitting there drawing, focusing, and his own eye doctor's telling him that you are not blinking enough.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
I get that now and then with the dry eyes. And the last eye exam I had, talking to the eye doctor, her thing was like every 20 minutes, look away, 20 feet or whatever. Like, there are best practices. Yeah. I don't know that I... apply them like I should, but that is a real thing that people are conscious of.
Yeah. The thing is with like a lot of like astigmatism, it's not just like the eye is getting worse and worse and worse. It's just the eye shape changes. So like sometimes you'll get a prescription and it's not as strong because it's just the changing shape of the eye. But I've heard that my whole life of just like you got to keep. Looking, but it's like, what is that? Like, I guess as a doctor, you got to say that. But
that
who's
blinking
doing
thing,
that?
I think I suffer from that too because I've had to get eye drops at different times because it's like dry.
Yeah,
it's just so dry, and I'm sure that's what it's from is not blinking right.
Totally.
Wow.
Should we bang out these last two?
Let's do it. Are you ready?
Yes, sir. Welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piscor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
And I gotta let you guys know that we have a Patreon out there. And at the highest level of our Patreon, you're watching us record this video live. And you're getting all of our videos completely before anybody else mitigates that kayfabe effect in total. But the videos are brought to you by the books that we make, and you're looking at a spread of our accomplishments right before you. Out in the wild right now, I'm serializing the next round of Red Room comics, Red Room Crypto's Killers issue number 1. It's going to be another 4-round issue of Red Room. It's going to be another 4-issue Red Room limited series. 2 trade paperbacks out there: Antisocial Network, Trigger Warnings. It's 10th anniversary of Hip Hop Family Tree. 3 volumes of X-Men Grand Design out there, as well as an omnibus. WYSIWYG is out there. Jim very soon has the Hulk Grand Design Treasury Edition coming to you. Put in your orders right now. That thing is going fast. It is unavailable in Amazon UK. It is unavailable in Amazon Mexico. So get your hands on this ASAP. Street Angel comics are forthcoming. Collection of Jim's earlier Street Angel stories and Street Angel Princess of Poverty is out there in the wild as we speak. But I feel like this is a long time coming, James.
It definitely is.
Taking a look at Elfquest number 1, we have 2 flavors of Elfquest here, man. This is a reprint of the original series in its original format with its original cover. I'm pretty sure that this was the basic cover painting of the original issue 1. And then a couple years later, actually a lot of years later, man, maybe like 6-7 years later, Marvel creates the Epic line and licenses some Elfquest comics from the Peonies here.
Yeah, and Glennis Oliver credited with coloring this. And I mention that because this stuff... I was reading this online at the Peonies website or the Elfquest website. They have, you can read most of this stuff, if not all of it there. And the coloring still kind of follows this template, but it's been, digitally painted and upgraded, I guess you would say, contemporary, made contemporary.
Yeah.
But at least the pages that I looked at and compared do follow this coloring guide, which is kind of interesting because it's not a Peonies color guide. At least it's not mentioned that way. In the back, they give Glennis Oliver the credit for coloring. So kind of interesting considering how much the Peonies do. Yeah, I mean, it's all them, for the most part. And when you think of Elfquest and say it's overdue, I put it in it's the triumvirate of the beginning of the direct market and creator-owned books for me, along with Cerebus and First Kingdom. And I remember seeing ads. I should have pulled one for this episode, but you would see the ads for all 3 of them together in those early days of alternative comics, the very beginning. It was those 3 titles.
Yeah, sure. And I think they coined the term ground level comics. These are the comics that they really, what bolsters them in those early days of the direct market is very specifically Phil Souling seeing them and saying, I'll buy 4,000. Yeah. And then Bud Plant on the West Coast saying, you know what? I'll buy 4,000 too.
That's it. Bud Plant and Seagate bought out the first run.
Yeah, totally. So for the purposes of our video, I think we should keep with the OG fidelity, man. But this is out there, and the cool thing about having a Marvel handle the license on this is that the Peonies can delegate some color to somebody else, allow them to do some extra packaging and things.
It's one of the great creator-owned stories because they've always maintained these things, and they predate a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, who would have had the same options and did in some ways with the first editions, in Color of the Turtles.
Might have to ask him some questions.
For sure.
Epic related.
Yes. Yeah, we meant to last time and you just get sidetracked. But the Peonies have done so many editions of Elfquest because it is creator-owned. You can read it online. They did the web version. They've done book collections that were in bookstores early on because they owned it. They were smart, and they made sure, hey, last generation bought Elfquest and liked it. Well, guess what? There are new readers. Let's try this new avenue. Let's make a new edition to stick with the market, to look up to date. And brilliant. It's shocking that this was not the standard model once this showed to be successful.
Yeah. Many have tried. Many have failed. Look at her use of color. Tell me this isn't exquisite stuff. What is this lady using? Is that markers?
That's a good question, because that's pretty early for a full color marker. If that's the case, boy, that piece looks a lot different today than it did when they photographed it for this cover.
And those markers are those canceled fucking markers because of like carcinogenic vapor properties and shit.
Quite a scent coming off of those, no doubt.
But the things that strike me with this piece is really kind of like the lack of the black line, the sepia lines for all the background stuff. There's a lot going on here.
We've been talking and circling, and we're going to do an episode on it soon, and it's attitude.
Yeah.
Attitude in a drawing, and I feel like this drawing has that attitude, man. If you are into fantasy a little bit, if Elfquest sounds good to you, and then you see this image with that wolf sticking its head around the side, like there's a lot being projected from that image.
Totally, man. And Wendy Pini, you know, like before making her comics, she was on the scene. She was Red Sonja, OG cosplayer, Gen 1 cosplayer. All that to say that she's a fanboy as much as anybody else, man. Wendy and Richard Pini, you know where they met, right?
In a letter column of Silver Surfer.
Yes.
It was so great.
So I look at this and I can't help but think of both Tolkien and Frazetta.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the same time, there was that Gnomes book that was out. I wonder if she might have had a copy of that, because she's creating a whole lore here, and like you said, went through the hands of many publishers over the years. When I was taking these like comic courses in literally second grade, Wayne Wise was a teacher. He's a proprietor of Phantom of the Attic for many years, and he brought a sample of a bunch of different kinds of comics of like what is possible, the stuff that is not just on the newsstand. He brought like a Nexus, you know, this is the era, like it's 88 when I'm doing this class, and it's a hardcover collection of Elfquest and from some publisher. And then after I saw that, it's like, you know, once you get a car, like you see that same car on the road a bunch. Like I saw that Elfquest, and then I started to spy it at Weldon Books and things. So this represents one of my first like 100 comics that I still have. Down in Homestead, there was a Vietnamese dude had a store called Alpha Used Books, and all my books that have this like price in there, that comes from the dude at Alpha Used Books. And I would bump into him at flea markets and shit, and he'd be buying stuff and reselling it. I got all my Mike Hammers in his shop. But this is a very important book for me, less for the subject matter in a lot of ways, more for the back matter, that which we will get into here. But I think I might call this video. I didn't know that the elves in Elfquest were the villains, because well, what I'll say is this has also been endlessly optioned for multimedia purposes, movies, cartoons, and things, that pretty much since it came out. Reading this comic, I could see how it would be tough to make that work in a way with the lore that's being created here, because it's like an imperialist story. Like, these elves just show up. Like, these people, look, they're happy, they're having fun, they're dancing around a fire, they're enjoying life, and all of a sudden, this castle materializes out of nowhere, literally plunks down in the middle of their lands, and then they start to, yeah, they're cute or whatever, but they're taking the resources from the land, and they're bougie. Look at how high class he is, and that's just the regular folk. The Elfquest people, the elves, they are villains, and it's not the only sort of impositions that they put on somebody in this very issue.
That's so interesting, Ed. not something I considered reading it, but you're right. I'm an easy mark to go along with the, whoever's cast as the protagonist. I'll jump on board with that. You know what I saw, though, in the indicia in there? It's 1989, this printing, but it's Poughkeepsie, New York.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, like, is this the same printer as Teenage Mutant Ninja
I bet
Turtles?
you it is.
It's magazine size.
I bet you it is.
So that's pretty interesting to me as well. And then, you know, we're looking at it, like that first page had a cool title lettering page. I like this lettering. I have to assume that's Wendy Pini's hand. Yeah. And she was an accomplished illustrator at this point. Like, she had 5 years or something as a freelance illustrator under her belt. So this is the first time I've read this comic, and going through it, I was so impressed by the quality of the art. Like,
totally.
She is a pro already in issue 1. Yeah,
it's true. She'll have the italic for the captions, and then the sort of standard font, but then there's some good emotive text. But it is these are ground level comics. These are considered ground level comics, which is to say superhero adjacent, Marvel Comics adjacent. So I look at those comics within that same kind of rubric, within that same framework. And the lettering would be considered more amateurish.
Yeah.
Here to an extent, it's a little looser. With her Ames guide gets away from her a little bit, and there'll be like small lines of text, big lines of text. So she has work, but like when it comes to the lettering of comics, you just got to do it a bunch and you're going to get it. I'm sure her shit's going to tighten up a whole lot.
It feels more D. Bruce Berry than Mike Royer.
That's true.
The lettering here.
This is a nerdy YouTube channel. If you've not been here before, man, establishing the lore.
I think it's genius that this is a fantasy book as opposed to a knockoff superhero book.
Yeah.
You know, if you're looking to build an audience, like this is something you're not getting at Marvel and DC.
Absolutely
But you're
true.
probably a lot of fantasy fans that are reading Marvel and DC.
Yeah, they had their healthy sampling of like the Frazetta paperbacks, and certainly grew up on Tolkien. Ralph Bakshi's Tolkien stuff probably came out. I pointed to this because I feel like that's an exact crib from a Frazetta piece.
Yeah, it could be. And story right away hits the ground running. You know, like those elves show up and then things kind of get chaotic. They're basically stranded on this world and at odds with the humans. And our very first scene here is one of the elves has been captured by the humans and is going to be sacrificed to the humans' god.
You're right. Yeah, so these are like the boozy civilians, man, coming into rival territory and saying, your traditions, you're fucked up, man. Like we're going to go to war with you and destroy you. And
This is a tale of gentrification.
It
is
is.
what you're putting out there.
yeah, the elves are the bad guys.
That's so funny to think of. I also look at this and I think of something like Air Cell. And it's
sure.
like...
Yeah, Barry Blair was jerking off
Oh, my
all over
goodness.
this stuff. No doubt. But, you know, Dungeons and Dragons will be coming up soon. It's very much what the seeds that Tolkien sort of sprinkled around culture really started to spring up in those late 70s from the kids that were growing up with that stuff. Like that Lord of the Rings set that I have right there, that's my mom's.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When she was a kid and stuff. So this is how, I mean, it's sort of how culture works, right?
Absolutely.
Like you sprinkle some culture to the kids, they internalize that, they adore it, they love it, they grow up, and some people might make role-playing games, other people might make comics.
The lighting on that face is phenomenal.
Right.
It's so good. It's an expressive face. I miss this kind of cartooning, by the way, because you just don't see this sort of like, there's no photo referencing going on here.
Yeah.
You know, it's a cartoon face, full of expression, but very animated, and so often that's gone now.
Totally. Yeah, we get it in a manga. This is an important story piece, man, where you got your establishing shot of the Holt. This is the little commune of the elves. This is their territory. So we establish it in all of its glory here for future reasons in this very issue. We're starting to establish a little hierarchy and a little bit of personality with these various elves. You got Cutter, you got Skywise. These are the ones that you always notice on the covers and things, man. And she does a reasonable job of establishing some of that hierarchy. Cutter is no doubt the leader, and you see sort of the different personalities of the various guys. This is I drew this, like, this is all I had. This is all the Elfquest I ever had. So like this panel and seeing these different kind of elf jobs and these different dudes, like I would make kind of my own drawings with these guys. This one in particular, because he was obviously the most strongest.
These are this is a classic comic book storytelling too. You know, like think of all the X-Men where you get the 2-page spread of the whole team and the names underneath them and stuff. Like it's comics 101.
Yeah, and it's total RPG porn. You know, like the way those things work, where you got your strong guy, but he's probably a little daffy in the head. He doesn't have the mind points, and then you got like maybe your thieves that can like steal, but they're not strong, nor are they good at magic. You got a guy who could do attacks from a distance. It's total like RPG elements.
Also, the wolves are amazing looking throughout.
I know, and she
She's
chooses
got
to
to be
do
a
that.
dog lover, right?
She chooses to do it. Whenever anybody chooses to do something like that, you know, had to include that set of anatomy that you have to learn. Props to you.
Yes.
Props to you. All right, so we established a little bit of the elves. We established a little bit of the tandem and the sort of issues.
Yeah, definitely the conflict between the humans and elves.
Let's reintroduce them a touch. And the humans are coming, and I guess you got to try to make the people who were there the whole time look villainy in some way. So they're basically saying, like, it's my ball, I'm going home. if I can't have it, fuck everything. And they just set the entire forest ablaze, including the Holt. So the little elves, they're in retreat motion. I feel like there's some Marie Severin in here.
I was gonna say Wally Wood.
Definitely Wally Wood, that Wizard King era Wally Wood. I think that Holt is exactly, I bet you I could find the panels of the Wally Wood stuff.
You mentioned
where we see that.
Like manga having that cartoon quality of like face expressions and things in today's world.
Yeah.
Looking this stuff up and trying to like kind of prep for this episode, I came across this as being called the first American manga.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense to me, man. Look at what she's doing. I mean, she knows she's using black and white, and she's choosing to do it all by hand. There's no zips, there's no duotone, but you're getting a good blend of value just from her straight up hands, man. If it's not like the hatching there, we get some good feathering, and certainly the spotting of blacks. I mean, this is a very bright panel.
Yeah.
And the black areas communicate that easily.
Yeah, the lighting's very consistent. How about the body language of our dog here, tail down between its legs? The fire stuff, I think, comes across really well as a threat, because there's moments when they're retreating one direction and they're like cut off and have to go another way, and it feels like the horrors that you hear about from like a forest fire, she captures that pretty well here.
Yeah, great depth. I mean, she is a solid illustrator through and through, man. You got great foreground elements, probably 20, 30 layers of depth in this panel alone.
I think that's part of what popped for me is we look at I personally look at so many of those like self-published black and white comics, and we've talked about how a lot of times that's somebody's first comic and it shows.
Yeah.
That's not what this feels like. And that's part of the surprise to me was just how accomplished this is.
If she wanted to, she could be a jobber at this level.
Oh, for sure.
She could do Iron Man comics. If she could do her own Silver Surfer comics if she felt like. But, this is the story. This is something she wanted to express, something she wanted to communicate. There wasn't, Mike Plug and those guys. They did their Weird Worlds or whatever in Marvel Premiere Comics or whatever. Like, that was gone. You could imagine that's the comics that she has in her long box. You know what I mean? Like, that kind of stuff. Further establishing the lore. So the elves, they took over this other area and made a bunch of a species mad. So let's do that 2 times. That's what I'm saying. They're the bad guys. Establishing cool design stuff, like this door thing. It feels like it works and things. You got this troll culture that it's like the subterranean. So like,
build your world, man. It's issue 1.
You could almost draw the map.
Welcome to issue 1, and check out this whole new world that we're making here.
You could almost draw the map at this point, man. And establishing just different parts of these different cultures. So, like, the elves, they're nocturnal, but they don't, like, evaporate in the sun. The trolls are full-on, like, mole people. Like, they don't want to see 1 ounce of bright lights.
And it's cool now because now you've got 3 groups. You've got humans, elves, and trolls. And let's, wonder what the troll-human relationship is.
Yeah, so the elves basically do a break-in. They do a push-in. Like on the Ring camera, you would see the person knocking.
Right. Yep.
You would see the person open the door, and then you would see a posse of people bum rushing the show, pushing their way into your house. And they're still being dicks to everybody inside that space. That's what I'm saying. They're the bad guys. I'm going to have to read further to see otherwise. So let's see if the peonies convince me.
Yeah, you see the troll yelling out too. We know your thieving ways, elf.
Yeah.
Boy, they have a bad reputation in this world.
It's true, man. You see treasures. Like, there's that, like, let's build some more mythology, some more lore. There's this magnetic kind of rock that's, like, attracting all their weaponry and things. Is that a cool piece in the color, Jimmy?
No, you know what? I wanted to check the epic piece to see where they stop, because they're shorter than the magazines, so there's got to be some editing in it. And honestly, like, I feel like there are whole pages that may be cut out of this. Makes me want to do a cut out of the epic joint, because like I said, it's like 20 pages here, and I think it's 32 maybe at least there, or maybe even more. It might be 36.
I see. When we get to like the last page, I wonder if it'll be the last page of this. They need to find a place to live, and the trolls, they are a wily lot, and you easily get the sense. Actually, it's great cartooning. where this troll is like golden light, but that one, and you see this other troll like kind of punch the dude, like knock the wind out
Right.
of him as he continues laying his spiel. That's just good cartooning.
It's really good, yeah. The little boof on the side to sell it in the words just in case you miss it. It's good stuff. Yeah, the cartooning is top notch because you're doing so many character designs. The groundwork for just this issue 1.
It's like it was in
Pretty
her
big.
head
Yeah.
for a long time. Like maybe these are like even comics she was making as a kid, or she just has a very developed world that kind of fleshed out like from the start. It doesn't feel like it's going to be a thing that she's just making up as she goes. Like I wouldn't be surprised if within an issue or two, like she'll tell you that yeah, it's going to be 20 issues or something, because it feels pretty tight. It doesn't feel like a thing that you throw a bunch of stuff up in the air and then just kind of build off of the bullshit that you're putting down. It's it's a little piece of that magnetic rock. Like she has intentions for this. She's sowing the seeds for the next issues. Which that's another thing that's very fascinating is the ambition. Unlike the Ninja Turtles guys who are like, let's make a comic and we'll have a complete story. Like she has an epic that she has in mind.
Yeah.
Like this is going to happen in another issue. It's going to progress. They follow the trail established by the trolls. They pop out the other side, and this is one of those bits that might work better in the color than it does in the black and white, because this is just a desert to me, right? There's no green there. But there's a way that you could look at that and say, like, well, is that a very macro view of a forest where you wouldn't see individual trees? That's a sweltering sun. I'm guessing it's a very arid location. The door gets shut, essentially, and now our guys are out in the middle of nowhere. A whole society, children involved also, with nothing but their weapons and their cunning.
Shades of Bone. We
Yeah.
would see a similar story unfold in Bone #1, a couple
More
decade
Tolkien
and a half
inspired
later.
stuff. Yeah. Now this piece, the elf illusion. What's the last page in the color? Same deal.
No, it's 10 pages earlier. It's them meeting the the troll leader, and like I say, it's I think that I don't know that they're cutting pages out as much as maybe like an issue is 2 issues.
Right.
None of the magnet lodestone stuff is in here. We don't get to the other side of the troll tunnels and sort of end the issue. Like this feels like
Yeah.
your cliffhanger issue, not quite the same in the epic issue.
Now, as a kid, this was everything to me, man. Seeing these original sketches, and very specifically, this right here spoke to me greatly, because as a child, like making comics myself with no real resources to figure out how to do it, and no real resources in terms of proper papers and things, there was that little bit of time where I decided, I want to make comics. And I had that like negative part of my brain that we see it a lot in the comments, to be honest, man, of just like when we put out our ideas about like how to promote, how to like get your stuff out there, there are negative people that are like, well, I don't have this and I don't have that and I don't have this. When I first started, I was like, I don't have a word processor to write proper scripts for myself. I don't know the paper, and I was talking myself out of it.
Right.
Seeing this and seeing that this is definite like composition notebook shit, and basically this is a Japanese nemu, man. Like this is like how the Japanese write their scripts to present to the editor. All the storytelling is there. I was making comics on notebook paper at that time. This was like permission to do so, to continue on this path. This square right here helped set me on a path to continue pursuing comic book making.
It's so valuable to see an example. Like when they talk about an image is worth 1,000 words, this is an image that's worth 1,000 words. It tells you so much.
Yeah. And then seeing the less refined sketches, and I hesitate to say that because it all looks good, but I mean there's sketchy lines here. We've seen how deft her inking is. She's so good at doing like a bold outer line and then thinner, smaller inner lines. This is clearly a sketch, but like seeing this kind of stuff was also very valuable. But look at that, man. That's a composition notebook, and
Yep.
it's all there, bro.
It's so interesting to see these layouts. And I was just going through the Red Room trade paperbacks, working on a cover and seeing your layouts in the back. It makes so much sense seeing these layouts that way.
Yeah, man. Super cool. Long time comes. These are like, look, Father Tree Press. I don't know that that's even them. That's not.
That is interesting. Like that's maybe their book wing or something, or maybe they're working with a book publisher, co-publisher, or something like that.
They had proper bookstore distribution at some point, and I could have gotten this around 1989. It could have been a reasonably fresh comic that I bought from secondhand at this time. It was definitely in better condition because I would have my 2 stacks of comics under my bed, and every Friday I couldn't wait. Like at school, I couldn't. Don't even give me a test on Friday because I'm just thinking about I'm gonna get out of school. I'm going to be able to read my comics
you're the
for
Hernandez
a weekend.
brothers, but you get them on the weekend instead of summertime. That's amazing. One of the last things that I think I came across regarding Elfquest and their work, I think they've donated their archives to Columbia. I think it was them.
A donation of like original art and stuff?
I think so. And like I saw a lot of Elfquest info this week, and I can't remember specifically, but I believe that's what was on there. And it'd be interesting at some point just to have a list of sort of like where are Cartoonist stuff archived, because I know Syracuse has some amazing stuff in their archives. It's really cool to think like if Elfquest is at Columbia, these resources, they're almost hidden, it's almost unknown, and then you realize like, oh yeah, like you could go and see some of those pages maybe in the back, or see the dummy makeup of this, or the original art, or the character designs, or who knows, scripts, whatever. I don't know what's part of that. But it's awesome that stuff gets preserved and put in a space where like the public can access it.
Yeah, totally, man. I after we did some of our Akira coverage, man, I kept mentioning Joe Peacock. He hit me up, and I asked him like, I know that the Academy of Motion Pictures like has your Akira stuff. Like, what was that? He's like, no, it's not a loan. Like, I just gave it to them. I wanted it preserved by people who would handle it well, and like. I got a family, like I got kids running around that, like I don't have the space for that. Like they'll be good custodians of it, and I think when you do that kind of thing, you can make provisions and requirements. And he's like, I don't want it broken up, I don't want it shipped off piecemeal or anything. I want it to be together, have this great archive of stuff. Anyhow, that's a move that could be done, which then makes me think about like, what about the Bone stuff at Billy Ireland and the Kevin and Hobbs? Are those loans or are those gifted donations?
It's really interesting because like I can think of off the top of my head half a dozen institutions that have big collections of comics related material, and it's like I don't know how well known that is. Like that's one of those bucket list kind of things. If your favorite cartoonist is Jeff Smith, like you can go to the Billy Ireland and see a bunch of that original artwork. That
Billy
that's
Ireland,
so cool.
Yeah, that Billy Ireland is only 3 hours away, and we haven't been going to it every year
we're not.
Since 1995 or something.
Yeah. There's so much. We live in a time of like wealth that is just mind-boggling. Again, like go back and tell my 12-year-old self what you're able to just go see on a weekend in Columbus or the National Archives or Syracuse or wherever. It's staggering. You take it for granted.
It's true, man. On that note, Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe to... It's true. On that note, Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell. We'll notify you when new vids are available. And hit up our Patreon. If you are a King Kayfaber, you're getting all the videos ahead of everybody, and you're watching us record this in real time, which mitigates that kayfabe effect completely. I bet you a couple of Elfquests have sold... right while we're recording this video, Jimmy. But tell the people what books you have out there.
Hulk Grand Design, Street Angel Princess of Poverty are my next 2 releases. If they're not out already, pre-order those right now wherever you get books. Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive and The Plain Janes are available wherever books are bought and sold. You can join me on my own Patreon at patreon.com/JimRugg, where you can see lots more of my art, download out-of-print zines and minis, and see what I'm working on next.
Red Room Crypto Killers is the comic that is being offered to your comic shops right now. It's going to come out, I believe, in May, and will be coming out in a monthly basis. Murder on the Dark Web for Fun and Profit is the name of the game in the Red Room Comics. 2 trade paperbacks out there, Trigger Warnings and The Antisocial Network. Send me your fan art if you want to get in that gore gallery. It's a 10-year anniversary of Hip Hop Family Tree Comics. 4 volumes of that out in the universe. 3 volumes of X-Men Grand Design. one WYSIWYG out there, man. Got 10 books out there just flying solo. What else do we have going strong, help keeping the channel afloat, Jimmy?
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe newsletter at the links below the video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts, merchandise, mugs, hats, stickers, and more at our spread shop. That link is also below this video.
Keeps these videos coming to you on a weekly basis. Given those marching orders, will be on our way.
Make more comics.
Good chat.
Yeah, I like that. I'm happy to do that. Makes me think First Kingdom is getting closer to the top of that queue.
I have my issue 1 not too far away. I actually was going through my magazines. I was looking for that Small Killing book, while I was going through all my shit. I saw a I hate that.
Yeah, I don't know why that happens. Did you lock that one again?
I'd do it again because there was a weird shadow for sure. So my thesis with this is the original Outlaw comic. That's what we'll call it. It was Zap Zero, the first Outlaw comic, or something like that, we'll call it. Even though this comes out second. It was produced first. The artwork got lost or something. What a fucking comic.
Yeah, it's another one of those, man. It's nuts.
Ready when you are, Jim. Welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piscor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
Going to be taking a look at the original Outlaw comic, but first gotta let you guys know that we have a Patreon, and our biggest supporters get all of our videos for free. And if they're up early enough, you're watching us on a live stream, even though they'll have access to that live stream, even if they are on the West Coast or whatever. The videos are brought to you by the books that we make, and you're looking at a bibliography of a bunch of our stuff. Red Room Crypto Killers 1 is being solicited at your comic shop right now. 2 other trades of that are available. Red Room Trigger Warnings and the Antisocial Network. I'm serializing new Red Room stuff on my Patreon. 3 volumes X-Men Grand Design, 10-year anniversary Hip Hop Family Tree, 4 volumes that. Jimmy has Hulk Grand Design forthcoming. 2 stores very soon. You need to get your hands on that quick because it is going fast already. Plain Jane's is out there, and Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive trade paperback is available to you. Helps keep the videos coming to you on a daily basis. Jimmy, let's take a look at the original Outlaw comic, man. Zap Comix 0.
That cover looks familiar, Ed.
I know, right? Yeah, thank you so much for that, dude. Just looking at this cover, this is not your average bear, man. This comes out in the late 60s. We know what comic book reproduction looks like, certainly even covers and things. These are deft hand separations that are being done. You see this little piece here? I was looking, you know how there's all kinds of misprints and things? This shows up on every Zap Zero, and it makes you wonder, is it a blended zip screen?
It's so interesting because I'm looking, I don't have a copy of this. I read a digital copy to prep the episode. There's just a cyan plate sticking up too. There's a line right here,
right,
and above it you're not getting any yellow screen on it. It's kind of fascinating.
Yes.
And I'll be honest, I did a Red Room homage cover to this. It makes me mad that I did not reflect that or this piece of seam of film. It looks like maybe there.
Yes. The separations are sharp as fuck. Nothing off register. It is 4 color because you got the little red here. I have 2 or 3 versions of this, and different price tags on each. That's how you
many
sort of denote it. And even this version has many printings, man. If it's 6543, does it mean it's 7th printing?
I never understand that.
It's
I
either
don't know.
6 or 7, something like that.
I guess so. It's so weird how that works. I don't totally understand that.
Yeah, but I have one that's a 60 center.
Nice.
Also, got these for cover price at Phantom of the Attic. I bet you it's probably from the BEM collection.
Probably.
When Bill Boychel sells the BEM stock to Phantom before he creates copacetic comics, and they had them in order, every issue, man. I would starve myself from school lunch and then go to Phantom on Saturdays and pick up an issue or 2.
One note before you flip: 6 toes.
Yeah.
6 toes on that left leg. It's great that they would keep these in print too, because
Totally.
you can still buy these at a reasonable price. You can
Yeah.
find a 7th printing for under $20 or,
Totally.
or so. So it's I'm glad whenever a company does that or a creator does that, and hopefully it serves them well too.
This comic does a lot. This comic is extremely freaking important. One of the elements that is important is Robert Crumb creating the grand tradition of every line on the page is controlled by him, drawing the interior covers, drawing the back cover, cutting your own color separations, not allowing any more space for anybody else's anything. I betcha, well, I'd be willing to bet that there's some hand-lettered indicia stuff.
Yeah, almost
on
certainly.
the first round. This is certainly easier to manage at this point. But we can make a fucking argument that, this is 1967. This is kind of the birth of the direct market in a way. It's not the Phil Suling direct market. They're using the distribution mechanism of the psychedelic posters and the brick and mortars of the head shops to distribute the stuff.
Yeah, that stuff is interesting to me, and it's something, honestly, I don't know that much about. I know they were distributed that way, but I don't know who the distribution players are, and it makes me think like that's part of why this may not be self-published, right? Is because there is like a distribution model. So you have publishers entering undergrounds with sort of roads into that distribution model.
And the road to get to underground comic books is the same as the road that created the comic book. There were the hippie papers, weekly papers, and you might get a little strip here, Captain High, Dope Man, whatever the fuck. And then you get like a one-page broadsheet or crumb strip, or like a Gilbert Shelton, Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers, or whatever. And then those start to like catch, people really start to endorse those papers and grab those papers. Yeah, I'm going to read Abby Hoffman's article, but let's see what Crumb's up to these days, man. And then create a system where like you're doing the complete paper, which is a little bit different than the way comics grew. But like there were like 3 issues of Yarrow Stocks, which was a broadsheet. We looked at it with Warren Bernard, I believe. If we didn't do it on the channel, we looked at it at his house. And if we didn't look at it on the channel, Warren, you're going to bring those next time. 3 issues of that where Crumb is doing the complete, broadsheet, no staples, none of that stuff, man. A big newspaper. Very logical to grow to the space of the comic book with the glossy cover, the newsprint, all of that. Another innovation is just the avant-garde nature of it. This is 1967, and there's not like traditional punchlines. The shit is goofy. The stuff ends, and you're just like, what is Meatball?
I was gonna say, like, starting with page 1, this is like, what?
Starting with
fair enough.
0.
Yeah, fair enough.
Hey, what's that little dot over there? And it's just this like Max Fleischer looking like 1940s cartoon guy waving, and he's like, look, you'll never know what you're getting an issue of Zap. Like, Crumb is out of his mind.
He is.
In this moment.
He is. Yeah, this feels like you get to like dream projects.
Yeah.
You imagine Robert Crumb and Charles Crumb making comics as a kid. And then at this point it's like he just gets to make a comic book, and it's a comic book. It'd be professionally printed, and it's whatever he wants. And he's doing Meatball, you can see EC in that title lettering, right off the bat. And it's just odd. Like, I was reading this. I must never have read this. And I'm reading it, and I'm like, oh, this explains a chunk of, like, Yummy Fur Chester Brown comics
all of this.
That are kind of, like, I don't know, subconscious, surreal, weird stream of thought.
Yeah, this guy could be in Ed the Happy Clown.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting, bizarre comics.
And man, many an intellectual has tried to unpack the Meatball story in particular, allusions to capitalism, class warfare, class changing.
Yeah, and
the corruption.
It's so funny because, like, knowing Crumb, it's hard to imagine that it's any more than just like 5 pages of comics,
right?
Like it's
that seems how he operates. It's a very first question Terry Zwigoff asks him in the documentary is, what are you trying to get at your work? And Crumb pushes that away. Like, I'm just trying to reveal stuff to myself. I could look at something, 10 years later, 15 years later, and have some idea of like where it might have been, but it's a constant process of revealing things to himself. And you know what? It ain't a pretty picture.
How old is Crumb at this point?
That's a good question. I think he's like early 40s.
Really?
40s. No. When he's born.
Oh,
like the year. So
So young.
20s, like
Okay.
late 20s.
And the reason I mention it is like, if all we did was look at Meatball, we could probably talk about it for half an hour.
Totally.
But this kind of stuff, you know, on the previous page, you see sort of like the authority archetype figure that's also a cartoon, completely realized visually.
Yeah.
And then like the Meatball's practically a mascot. It looks like it could be an advertising mascot there.
Yeah. And it dovetails into these guys who are like those like, let's go out to the lobby to get ourselves a snack.
It's a huge vocabulary.
And he's pulling from the imagery that was all over the place when he was a kid. And that's what like really is the trippy shit, because he's reappropriating extremely wholesome stuff
And
from that
sometimes
time period.
unwholesome.
Yeah, for sure. Like, in this exact imagery would be in those old cartoons too. Like, you got to have
And in the advertising.
you got to have the precursor pieces in Floyd Gottfredson Mickey Mouse's, and even Will Eisner pushed back and like has language to describe like his use of like black imagery in his comics and things. And Crumb, you know, it's a blemish. It's something that turns a whole lot of people off to his work. So you got to at least
and
acknowledge it.
Understandably so. Like anything we look at, I always think like, if this really isn't your bag, it's not your bag. Like
Yeah.
I'm not trying to push a particular comic on someone, but your description of like, again, starting with Meatball and the idea of like, what is this? And it's sort of like Crumb processing the world. You know, it's much less Crumb making a statement than it is Crumb sort of saying like, this is the shit. Like, this is what's around me.
Right.
And that's where you see these really problematic imagery, because it's like, that's what I grew up with in advertising.
Totally.
It'd be self-censoring if it weren't there.
Right. Itsy and Bitsy is a good page to unpack a little bit because it's him, dude, it's just a rapidograph. Like, it's that deadline. He might have a different, you know, he uses a different line for the panel border, but it's a very clear deadline rapidograph. It's tighter than the sketchbooks, which suggests penciling. But
Or working it out as a rough in the sketchbook first.
yeah,
or
I mean, this
concept.
is pretty tight.
It is
stuff.
tight. It is tight. No doubt about it. It's that size calls to mind something like a Chris Ware,
It
a
does.
generation or
exactly.
two
You
later.
can imagine the Quimby strips pulling from this, and then Gilbert will do strips that are like this, you know, 20, 30 panels a page, and it's just animation. He's doing animation on paper basically, and it's slapsticky, goofball stuff. He uses these kind of characters a bunch.
And it has that same feeling as Meatball in the sense of, what do we take away from this?
Right.
You know, it's these two guys that are fighting and hurting each other, but also like buddies and end on good terms, and you know, walk in and walk out. It's like almost a circle.
He admits that he is much more a drawer than a cartoonist, and certainly all this early period stuff, he's not concerned with Aristotle. He's not concerned with 3-act structure. He's just doing, basically it's a vestige of his childhood that he's doing, man. And once again, in the documentary, he talks about like he has other drawing interests. This is like a means for him. I guess the biggest strip is this Mr. Natural one, character that proved popular already in the free weeklies, or I guess the alt weeklies, the underground weeklies at the time, establishing two of his main characters here, Flaky Funt and Mr. Natural, who are characters that he would be using basically the rest of his career during the time that you and I were hanging out, man. Those mystic funnies, those are Mr. Natural stories with Flaky Funt as he continues to grow up and become a man. Here he's kind of a doe-eyed, basically, like Mr. Natural's Charles Manson. and you could see reading this comic that there are these suggestible lost fucking kids, and if you got the wrong guy kind of steering them in directions, tremendous evil can happen. Because like, yeah, he's a guru or whatever, but he's very lo-fi. Yeah, I'll send you something in the mail, but that's not quite good enough for this dude. And it's very California, where like you got rich ass people willing to give lots of money to like live forever or have some secret information or something. So then he does that bullshit baffles brains gimmick that's really satisfying, which is like anybody going to a psychic or crystal ball reader or something. And there's like whole books you could read on that stuff, man, about cold reading somebody, man. A maybe is a yes. A no is a no, and a yes is a yes. And you judge a person's body language when you tell them a story, and you see how they're responding. And It looks positive. Keep going in that direction. Like there's whole books about that
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting that Crumb is so good at that part, that human psychology.
He's an outsider. He does not identify. He's associated with the hippie movement and all that stuff, but he himself does not identify with that. He pushes against it. And I was having this conversation last night where I was saying that like the 10-year anniversary of Hip Hop Family Tree is 10-year anniversary of me not being a part of society in a way, because like the culture's changing, and I'm sitting here every day drawing, living in my own world, and as things are changing, I am removed. I am living in my own headspace. I'm living in my own culture. The people that I associate with, you included, are not representative of like the tweets that you see or like the comments that you see online. It's different people. It's a different generation. I'm not a part of that. But he was young at the time, and this is like, you know what? Everybody around me is corny.
And living in it.
Living in it. Like, I mean, I feel that way when I go to Polish Hill. You know, and see that shit? Like, I'm Crumb at that point, man. It's like, oh, man, yeah, this is corny-ass behavior.
You know, you mentioned the cartooning coming out of his childhood, and worth noting for anybody unfamiliar with his story that haven't seen the Crumb documentary or don't know his backstory, it's not a pleasant childhood.
No.
You know, it's there's some ingredients there that if you're going to continue to kind of sow those, it's going to reflect that.
You don't get that drawing proficiency if you were the prom king. Using full-on, like, popular hippie imagery in just a fucking acid trip of a comic right there.
It'd be amazing to see people put together runs of this kind of stuff, because I think of the dancing Alex Toth strip.
Yeah.
And, you know, like, you could find probably some Ditko stuff that has these kind of elements, and I feel like that's a subgenre of comics, this kind of thing where, like, the visuals just completely take over the narrative.
This is a whole comic right here. This is a 22-page comic in one page with these little bearsy weirsies that still have that sort of iconic Fleischer Brothers, like early Iwerks, proto-Mickey type energy, where you got some little dudes pulling a caper, consummate cartoonist, right? So you got the black mouse, you got the non-black mouse with like white ears or whatever, the albino mouse or whatever. They pull a trip. They snatch an old lady's pocketbook, throwing dynamites. They're hooligans, running from the cops. Everything. One of them meets a girl, but there's no honor among thieves. So he's the dude that got all the bounty, and is like, "Hey, baby, hey, toots, let me take you out on a date." It becomes spy versus spy, where the other mouse comes up and is gonna cause damage to the guy. Probably a little jealous that homeboy got a girlfriend, man. But no honor among thieves. But, you know, they're both shifty characters. Our guy suspects something's up and is prepared, but the girl has an idea. Right. You see, man. She's like, listen, we could be a throuple.
Yeah, and then our mouse has an idea.
Still bandits and putting that girl out on the track, baby. Oh, it's raining outside. Dance between the raindrops, biatch.
Incredible story. Every panel is loaded with something that is comics language.
Yes.
Like every gag, you know, slipping on oil for the policeman that's chasing him, are word balloons that have music notes and question marks in them. Sound effects. All the sweat drops and the exclamation points off the top. It's so loaded with just cartoon iconography. And when you mention Fleischer Brothers, I got to confess, like I would catch reruns of that when I was a kid. That stuff used to really disturb me.
Sure.
There was a darkness in that material.
Yeah.
Probably reflective of like the 20s or you know, early 30s or whenever that stuff's being made. That's like, it's a tough world out there. You know, like the backgrounds of those comics, man.
Everybody's a hobo.
I'm
like
happy.
Like there was that one, you know, the Christmas special. I got that on one of those like five and dime VHS tapes that's real light and eats up your VCR. And it's like, you know, it's kids in an orphanage and they're just taking apart their dresser drawers to make toboggans and things.
Right. And we have extra room, so let's put another strip down here.
Just like those broadsheet strips of yore, where it would be, you know, here's a thimble theater, and then you're getting like a Pee-wee strip at the bottom or whatever.
I also think it's good to call out, like, imagine this is a spread. You know, like we're looking at each strip and kind of talking about them, but also like this is a spread. Like people are picking this up from a head shop with no context of comics, maybe haven't read a comic since the newspaper when they're a kid or who knows when. And now you're like, in the middle of this,
Yeah.
maybe high or, tripping or something. It would be so bizarre to encounter this with no context.
Totally. But the people of the day would have their own context, and I think that's what spoke to the people, man, is like they had it, like they knew this stuff that he was exploring. Like with this piece, Duxy Yass Yass, 3 or 4 pager, told in caption monologue, which is something that you would not see often. It's very, very unique. It feels like a Chester Brown type story.
This whole comic is an issue of 8 Ball.
Sure, yeah.
Even having like the sub strips where it's like, oh, my strip ends 2/3 down. Let me put another strip at the bottom.
Yeah.
Like, a first person. This is the stroll.
Yeah, totally. It
and what a nightmare this panel is, man. I just stared at that panel this week.
Me too. Yeah. It's one of the unforgettable ones.
Boy,
man.
great drawing
because
of
it's
an
a
eyeball.
juxtaposition. Like that's very, there's realistic lighting. We'll call it realistic sort of building of the thing,
Yes.
even though it's cartoony. But then a cartoony cop car. See, like the juxtaposition is that's the beauty of comics.
Yeah, and now you've got a panel where like you're going in a different language direction with the cartoony stuff.
Yeah. This strip is making fun of like the beatnik, hipster kind of guys. The romanticization of the drug addict, fucking hippie dude.
I'll tell you the
Proto
truth.
hippie dude.
Yeah, making fun of, but also like I feel like it feels to me like the author has encountered this guy, and it is not a pleasant picture of the life that you're living. Is this like strung out, junky hippie?
So I heard allusions, man. It was Bob Beerbaum on his Facebook. So like you gotta take that, like, consider your source or whatever. But Bob Beerbaum, shop owner in this area, said that Rory Hayes is the inspiration for this strip.
I mean, look, I love Rory Hayes cartooning, but you read about his life, and it may be,
By the way, let's not forget. When I talk about like the birth of the direct market, yeah, we have Phil Suling here on the east, but there were like 7 shops like in that Bay Area, like the Bud Plant, Bob Beerbaum, Gary Arlington, who had a shop where Rory Hayes was just like running the cash register,
man.
or I guess the cigar box,
yeah,
that had money in it, like whatever comic
right,
shops
yeah.
had back in those days. But dude, like the direct market that's a West Coast, like Bay Area
Big time
invention, like through this context and fueled by these kind of comics.
Wow, that's I know that, and yet I don't connect all the dots all the time.
It's just kind of coming like in this conversation, you could kind of like draw those parallels.
But it's another one of those stories, man. If you just read the last 5 pages of this comic book, wow.
Yeah. Freak out funnies, man.
Always great lettering too. I feel like we
every
haven't
time.
talked about it yet this episode, but anytime we talk about Crumb, you have to.
Absolutely.
But it's so good. It's such a reflection of his ability to do everything visually.
Absolutely, man. And if you want to make inferences, this is an old timer who is let's not make inferences. They're a bunch of fucking little snoids that live in the sewer, and this guy encounters them. Once again, more characters that Crumb will use a lot. Have no idea what his purpose is for those, but it's always entertaining.
By the way, the pygmies in Ed the Happy Clown
There
that
you
live
go.
under the city in the sewer and terrorize people.
There you go, man. Oh, it's a 2-pager. So it's like he's an old fucking square, and then he becomes I don't know. He leaves that old life behind. This City of the Future stuff, man. How about that splash?
Yeah, interesting to think of all the Mobius that I've looked at in my life, and then you look at that splash.
Yes.
They're not unrelated.
As a sort of student or vestige of the Harvey Kurtzman brand of cartooning, this is a de facto, almost down to the title lettering, three letters. It's almost just Robert Crumb's Mad.
Yeah.
And this story in specific is not far from the one early Mad story. It's a Wally Wood story where it's like the city of the future and everybody's in those like Segway type machines, and the guy gets tipped over and nobody's strong enough to like rewrite themselves. But it's his version of, here's the future. And there really is, like, this has come to pass. Everyone will be tuned to everything that's happening all the time. No one will be left out. Will all be normal. It didn't quite work out that way. Like, people are ODing on information, and it's made people fucking fully batshit. But this one has come to pass. Sex robots, very important in sci-fi fantasy.
I've been listening to AI podcasts all week.
Yeah,
and that stuff combined with this script. Oh boy.
Yeah, got a lot of AI here.
Yeah. Be Jesus Christ. Create your own masterpieces. Blow up the world. Boy, it's almost a collection of internet clickbait.
Oh, totally. Like each one of these things. If he was just coming out and he did this as like a scrolling thing on Instagram, 1 million followers.
Yeah.
1 million little hearts on your IG.
It's even funny. I don't know if you caught the highlight of Logan Paul on the Royal Rumble and Ricochet. They did a spot in the middle of the match where they launched from opposite top ropes at each other. It's there you go. Pretty sure that's where they got the idea.
I feel like this is the one modern day panel from that time period. People sitting around all day playing mind games. Man, I'm so glad this part of my life is so done. Where like people were like, "Hey, want to come over and hang out?" And then, "Oh yeah, man, I haven't seen you in a while." And then you sit there and it's like, "Okay, so, oh, this is it. This is what we're doing." And then we're building to this right here. This is Sweden or one of those like.
Right.
One of those Scandinavian countries where you just go here and you get your cyanide pie.
You know what, man? Even like I've seen an article recently, sort of saying how like you're lucky if you go at this age, whatever age, but about it might have been 65. Like almost literally, it might be that caption as like a headline of like it's kind of their ideal way out.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
Uncle in this garbage truck. Little page of filler. And I feel like I saw this Get Stoned thing. I think it is a poster. I think the ripoff guys, I think maybe Gilbert Shelton and crew helped run these off. But man, I swear I think I saw this at like Spencer's.
I was gonna say, dude, you could be selling this, I think, probably on college campuses today
Totally.
in high volume.
Totally.
No pun intended.
And knowing the audience, which I'm not really suggesting that Crumb did, but me personally imagining the audience, the stories of him selling it on Hate Street, all of that, I'm sure there was a very heavy percentage of people that didn't look at any of the craft of anything and they're just like, oh, that's funny, man.
Also, I'm sure there's an equal large percentage that gets to this page, follows these directions, and then it should say, now go back to page 1 and start again.
Look at all the lettering treatments on that one page. It's a full ad.
It's nuts to look at this book, and again, like I can point to generations that followed this that feel like this is a template, this is a blueprint. It's that thing of like
he created a grand tradition.
It's amazing by itself, but I don't think we can overstate the influence this book has had on comics.
Yeah, totally. Like just making a strip that doesn't need to have a clean resolution is a giant movement forward. It creates a lot of possibility of the comic medium that was not put in place there before that.
There's juxtaposition of different languages of comics
there
mingling
is.
On these pages.
And inventing some stuff. Like that monologue piece in captions, be a couple years before Wolverine's doing that.
Right, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's just...
Absolutely.
I guess there would be versions of that in the ECs and things. But for all of the recognizable elements of this comic, straight up panels, using the grids, using many crazy weird grids, using the dialogue bubbles that we're all familiar with, this is an extremely avant-garde piece of work hidden inside of something that looks like a comic book on the surface.
Yeah, it's really subversive in that way, because you could have this in your comic book stacks, on your spinner racks, wherever you put comics, and not realize like what it is. It also makes me think like how many people got hold of this comic and went on to make their own comics.
Sure.
Because that's the other piece that like it feels like it's dripping with potential.
Yeah.
If you pick this up and you're a guy that likes to doodle and you're working in your notebook and I can picture a high school kid high in the back of the class thinking about this and making their own comics out of it, because the ingredients feel like they're all there.
That's the thing too, man, is he does issue 1. Issue 1 comes out first because I think this was done first, but they lost the pages or something.
Something happened. I think someone may have stolen them or something.
He had to redo it. So Crumb himself did the first 2 issues, 0 and 1, which also by the way, it's the first issue 0,
which is bizarre.
Yeah, and it makes sense. It's like form follows function, right? Like, well, I don't got these pages, so I'll put this out as issue 1. But now I have them, so I'll put it out as issue 0 because it comes first.
You say that like it makes total sense, but I mean, like, it'd be so easy to just put a number 2 on it. Be like, well, I got them now, so put it out. It's like, this is a bit of genius. Like, I would not skip over the idea that what a solution, especially for a stoner comic.
Totally. But everything you just said makes perfect sense in the lore of Zap Comix, where after issue 1, he starts getting the calls and the knocks, and Don Donahue or whoever starts getting the calls and all that stuff from like your Gilbert Sheltons and your S. Clay Wilsons, and it really does become, Zap becomes like it's like super group, man. It's the Yardbirds of underground comics, because these guys were doing work, but so much of it was derivative, so much of it was hack, so much of it was just completely Byzantine and uninspired. But you take the best of those guys and put them inside the glossy covers of Zap Comix, and you have this like super group of comic talent from that time period, where Neil Adams is talking about there's nobody 5 years before me. That's 5 years
really
after me.
Interesting to frame
it's
it that
because
way.
and you've seen Neil Adams literally a fucking John Hamm madman, suit and tie and the hair like Pat Sajak and shit like that. It was that show Mad Men. Like, what does it sort of explore? It's a changing of the guard. You got the square stuffy Madison Avenue dudes, and then you got these young hippies coming up. So like, this is like the other side of that. These are those guys.
And some of those dudes super accomplished as commercial artists.
Yeah.
Go on to be fine artists. Like, craft wise, they're up there with whoever you want to compare them to, but the sensibility is completely different. Maybe the greatest contrast between East Coast, West Coast, epitomized by those two different groups of artists.
It's true.
That's amazing. Show me another comics talk that compares Continuity Studios and Zap Comix.
You guys know why you come to Cartoonist Kayfabe, man. If you're good to go, I'm good to go, Jimmy.
Yeah, man.
All right, Kayfabers, hit the Patreon up, man. Support the channel at that level. If you are a King Kayfaber, you're watching us record these videos in real time. You have access to the complete stream, and me and Jimmy do freaking hour in between videos sometimes. And you're getting all the videos before anybody else, man. But the videos are brought to you by the books that we make. Jimmy, let the people know some of the stuff you have out there.
Hulk Grand Design and Street Angel Princess of Poverty are my next 2 books. Depending when you're watching it, they may be out or they may need to be pre-ordered. So reserve those if you haven't already picked them up. Street Angel, Deadliest Girl Alive, and The Plain Janes, both available now wherever books are bought and sold. And join me on patreon.com/JimRugg, where you can see more of my comics and art. You can download out-of-print zines and mini comics, and you can see what I'm working on next.
Red Room Crypto Killers issue 1 is going to be coming to shops within the next couple of months, but we need to know how many of those to print, man. So let your comic shop know that you want them. There are 2 existing trade paperbacks of Red Room Comics, Trigger Warnings and the Antisocial Network. Hip Hop Family Tree is celebrating its 10-year anniversary, and there are 4 volumes of that out. 2 box sets are out there in the wild. 3 volumes of X-Men Grand Design in the wild, and you'll find WYSIWYG if you look hard enough. Supporting the books keeps the videos coming out to you on a regular basis. Jimmy, what else do we have out there that people can help support the channel with?
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe newsletter at the links below the video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts, merchandise, hats, mugs, stickers, and lots more at our spread shop. That link is also under this video.
Perfect way to support the channel. Given those marching orders, we'll be on our way, Jim.
Read more comics. That's a good that's a good issue. That's a fun one to talk about.
Good conversation.
Yeah. I need Fana to send me. Are they out of the Zap boxes? Wonder if they're out of them.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I'm gonna have to reach out and see if I can finagle a Zap box set. Wow. It's really interesting going through comics and finding the stuff like that just resonates for decades.
Yeah.
You know, like comics aren't comics the way we know them without that.
Right. You know what I want you to do, Jimmy? I want you to airdrop me one of the vids, because I want you to do a turtle vid, and I'll do a turtle vid. That feels good.
Yeah, let me keep those renderings going.
I want you to do, like, give me one of those, like, smaller joints.
Yeah.
But you should do the Outlaw Comics, just because I want to see what your thumbnail will look like.
Yeah, I'll definitely.
I think that'll be a sexy thumbnail you'll come up with.
Yeah, it's a good week of stuff.
Yep. Did we do everything here? Are we missing some stuff? We did.
Listen, if we get Eastman and Laird to do videos, it's like 9 videos this week. Not counting the live stream.
You did 3.
You did 2. They'll do 3, hopefully.
Right.
And our live video makes 9.
Yeah, I never count that because we always got to do 7.
Sure.
You know, to build our queue. So as long as we do
call
7.
it 8 then, because that's 8 videos.
Yeah.
That's a full week.
Yeah. Okay. Uh-oh. Let me see if I got some texts. No bad texts. Okay, man. See, no, Klaus has me paranoid, Jimmy.
Nah, we'll be good.
But there's no.
I can't wait to talk to those guys. I'm so excited to get them together, and hopefully everybody just have a good time.
Oh, totally. Totally. We're the guys to talk to, man. There's a lot, dude. I have a lot to say about because like if we go through the issues, and here's what I'm thinking, Jimmy. Like what do you think about like framing it with the issues and not having just like a specific kind of chat thing, but like having this flowing conversation where we could just like, because it's a chat where we're looking through the comics, right? And there's going to be a point where they are separated geographically but still making comics. So let's talk about like when does that take place? And chat room, this is primo stuff for you guys to kind of chime in. We'll hang out here for like another 20 minutes or something.
Yeah.
So this when they separated geographically but we're still making comics, what was that process? Were you driving pages? I don't know how far the spread was. So is that a thing?
FYI, I'm interested in that process stuff with Klaus too, because when he's doing pencils, inks, and colors, where's the letter show up? Like, is he doing pencils and sending the pages off and then getting them back? But not to sidetrack this conversation. Yeah. But yes, I'm very interested in that. I'm interested I think the conversation from issue 1 to 2, like when you guys decide you got a hit, now or is it just like idea dumps? You know, because it feels like, you know, like I read the next 3 issues this week in prep.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot in those 3 issues. Like, you're really, man, if you reverse engineer the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it feels like you're really laying stuff down in those issues.
Totally. I got this text from Peter Laird. I'm looking forward to it as well. I just read closely issue 2 of TMNT this morning. Interesting to take that kind of look at the early material. One thing that strikes me about the first 5 issues is how quickly it became evident how flexible and adaptable the Turtles were.
Yeah.
I mean, we went from ninja on ninja mayhem in the first issue, battling techno-terrorism in the second, a wild, nearly issue-long car chase in the third, to TCRI aliens in issue 4, and off into adventures in outer space in the 5th.
Well said. Perfect. You know, so yeah, like getting into that sounds... I'm so excited for it. Because, I mean, like, they do an issue. The thing with the Turtles is, like, its success is this.
Yeah.
It's not like, okay, we're doing all right, and then the cartoon comes and we take off.
Right.
That first issue was a success. You know, like, that series was just... It was a success. If that stuff hadn't ever happened, it would still be a piece of comics history where it's like, wow, this series really burned bright. Like, hit the ground running. To get that charge, like, both of you guys are into making comics... You know, you're sharing an apartment, you're struggling to make ends meet, and you're just really entertaining yourselves. You're your audience here with issue 1, and then it comes back, it's a success, and now you're sitting there going, what do we do? What can we do? Right. And it's everything.
Right.
Yeah, it's going to be, I'm so excited to get those guys to weigh in on that.
You know, it's something we've always talked about, and we're on the record maybe with every Turtle video that we ever had about that title. And I changed the title of like what the next comic that I want to make. Like like with those characters, you know. I changed it, and I might still change it further to try to nail the title, because that's all that they had to sell that thing, and it was so evocative that it got the gears going, and they were. It just so happened that it was a good enough comic that generated that further buzz. So it's like you'll do a lot of work for yourself if you can nail a great title for your comic.
Whenever, when I taught at SVA, I put my curriculum, like I built that course myself with no direction. And I would have discussions and things, you know, that would maybe not be a lesson, but it'd be something to be like, oh, let's talk about this. And I tried to figure out titling. And I ended up doing nothing with it because I could not figure out, like, one, how do you judge a good title? And how do you judge what impact it has? And I think Turtles is a great example of like a title that nails it.
Yeah.
But it's so hard to find examples like that where you can really point and be like, that title's it.
You know,
because like there's weird philosophies like Jeff Smith, all his books are 4-letter titles. It can't be an accident. You know what I mean? Like that's a thing he believes in.
The entire exploitation genre is good title. It's like that you pull from that. It's strong adjectives, strong verbs.
Sure, but some of those things go on to be the most successful movies, you know, profitable movies ever, and some of them never even get a VHS release.
You gotta have the goods also, you know, like that's the Turtles thing.
It's hard to gauge a title, is what I'm saying. The Turtles, I think, do, but it's really like title's one of those most ambiguous, strange. You can find great titles that didn't sell. You can find horrible titles that do sell. It's almost completely subjective in a way, the title.
Right. But I mean, that's why those madmen get paid millions of dollars to come up with like great stuff. And Laird nailed it. And I think we've said it in our own stuff also. We're like, it needs to be that exact order of words too. Like, because, and that's where that iambic part comes into it, because of like how like it just flows into the next. And if you just say it by diagramming the sentence, like, you are singing the song. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah. Like you're singing the song.
It's wild.
Just in the title.
Seems like they did it too pretty smooth and quick. You know, like they almost had it and then they added, you know, maybe switch 2 words or add mutant or whatever. And they're there. Like it seemed like they did it.
You could picture smoothly. It, man. Because it's like, oh, Ninja Turtle. A mutant Ninja Turtle. Like that. It starts off as like, you know, that type of shit, and then it was just strong enough energy. Like
I would always think, like whenever I would see the title, I would always think Teenager and X-Men. Like Teenage is the X-Men equal sign. Right.
Yeah, because like Teen Titans was out too.
Yeah. Hey man, listen to some of these questions.
Yeah.
Would love to hear them speak to the Zuli issues. That would be amazing. Like,
should I grab the doujinshi and just like do a little piece? Should we do 5 minutes, man?
It might be. I was gonna say that, you know, as a possible like conversation, like if we decide let's do 2 issues and maybe they're not ready for issue 4, almost having the stack there and be like, let's just go through and we'll just drop a cover, and you guys talk about what you remember at this time period.
Yeah, true. Like Laird.
What sparks when they see this stuff?
We talked about a little touch with Laird, and he basically said he was hands off to that stuff. So we get Kevin Eastman by himself. I think that we could have a much broader conversation because like Laird was out of it in a way. Like, and it makes sense. Like. That feels like Eastman energy.
Yeah, it feels like a Tundra, you know, trial run or something.
Yeah, I'm just
like
gonna
a
make
proof
some
of
tea.
concept.
But I hear everything you're saying.
Yeah, they asked him about working with Corbin.
Oh yeah, great.
I wonder now about the Peonies, if that was somebody they crossed paths with early on from a self-publishing standpoint.
Right. Certainly, Dave Sim was one.
Yeah. Everybody likes your idea of showing off those doujinshi. You got to imagine Peter Laird get a kick out of that. I bet you that's something that's pretty different for him.
Yeah, I talked to him about that, man. I brought it up. I was like, Peter, I don't know if you saw the video, because I mean, he reached out. That's the thing. He reached out to me, just randomly, and just answering questions. and I told him, I'm like, did you see the video where we show off the Japanese stuff? And I actually don't remember, like, it didn't resonate. Like, it's not memorable to me. But I was like, yeah, it's like, and they're all gay sex too. And then, like, some of them are pretty explicit. He's just like, there's something for everyone. He's such a cool guy. And I really don't think, I think one of the questions I'm going to ask, or that we'll bring up at one point, is like, how far outside were you guys from your peers? Like, were you just completely disrespected?
I really want to get into that.
Because like just by having this channel, there are professionals out there who are jealous as fuck, like talk a lot of shit, and it's like, like we ain't the Ninja Turtles, so like they must have. I guess what I'm saying is I don't think that Peter Laird has a vehicle to talk comics with some dudes.
Right. I'm very interested in it because I do think that success made them step away or manage differently that world. Like I feel like they didn't get to enjoy that comics brethren, fellowship, community.
They had their posse, and it was other very successful dudes, but maybe not even at the time. They had their Bissett, they had their Veach, they had Scott McCloud, Stan Sakai. And I think that's how it has to be, man, because they're just like these artists and shit that get to sit around. They sit around and they just come up with scenarios in their head, and then they create enemies out of imagination. Like, that guy snubbed me, like that kind of shit. Imagine what, like, Eastman and Laird, like, oh, you guys don't deserve it. Look at you, can't even draw a hand, like that type of shit.
I imagine too, even the fandom part. Because once that stuff takes off, like say once the cartoon comes out,
yeah,
like I would expect them to get mobbed if they showed up at a convention from fans.
Yeah.
And you think of like Alan Moore's reaction to American conventions after Watchmen. I don't know that the Turtles guys would be a lot different.
Yeah,
Maybe it's kids or something, but it's still that thing of like totally different than like George Perez sitting next to them or something.
Right. By the way, that's closer to our analogy too. Like when the cartoonist kayfabe boy shows up at conventions, get steady mobbed.
I was thinking of another issue that might have been interesting to go over, and that was like City of War Part 1. Because I think it's those guys. I'm trying to think if there's another person contributing to that.
I think that's A.C. Farley or whatever.
He's doing some art?
A.C. Farley?
Yeah.
I think he is.
I can't remember, but I feel like the very first one, it's like those guys are back together.
Right.
William Mahaffey asks, boy, I'm probably butchering his name. Sorry, William. Did they ever get offered or consider doing a regular title at one of the big two? That's kind of interesting. I don't know that they would have ever needed to from a financial standpoint once because things do take off quick.
Yeah.
But as fans, they might have been interested in something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, in that interview.
They also may have had no time because it seems like once things take off, it's a full-time gig just running the Turtles.
In that interview that Peter sent us from Comics Interview magazine, Kevin Eastman said, like, I would like to do a Daredevil story, and then 25 years later,
yeah,
he does his little Daredevil story.
Yeah, you know what they're saying? 50 is just those guys, and I think that's the last comic they did together.
Right.
Yeah, it'd be a fun one to.
It's going to be a funny game to play, Jimmy. Was that show the movie Super Troopers, where like those guys would like come up with like little games, so like say this word a bunch of times.
Yeah.
So like our game to play, with Eastman and Laird, will have zero mention of Last Ronin, no mention of it whatsoever. Because we played that game already with Peter, and like it was never mentioned because it's like so just something else. It's so like. Their names added to this other thing.
Yeah, comment, it's crazy there's never been a Daredevil TMNT crossover. I don't know if the Turtles have crossed over with any Marvel license.
And I have a You guys could go draw it. Maybe I'll make a video of it or something, man. My favorite Kirby comic is, and I cannot find it, man. I don't know where I have it, but it's that Captain America annual one with Magneto.
Mm-hmm.
And
I have that.
And he's like seeking out some other mutants, man. And then there's like mutant 1 and mutant 2, and like one of the mutants is like inside of a watch face. You know, it's like a super little guy. It's inside of some dude's watch. Like that inspired me. Like, imagine like it would be X-Men meet Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it'll be like the Xavier, like Cerebro, fucking is going off in the sewers, but like Magneto and his posse are like searching for the same fucking blips. And then they come across the Ninja Turtles, you know?
That's a really cool idea.
Yeah. Just like as a simple premise and stuff.
Yeah.
I have no idea where it would go from that. But it very much inspired by that Kirby. Because it was Captain America searching for these mutants and Magneto searching for them and then coming to blows or whatever.
It's such a good idea because it's so simple. Like, you can get there quick. Because the
Right.
whole thing with those crossovers is how fast do you get everybody together?
Right.
And you could, man... If you wanted to, you could do that in one page, have the setup of those guys triangulating on the same spot.
Yeah, but just the way business of comics is set up at this point and stuff, man, it's like they can't afford us. You know, IDW can't afford us. Like it's like that page rate ain't nothing, and you're not giving royalties and shit, and you're not attached to royalties if it goes to a future publisher. It's just like it's just not worth it if you're a maker of comics completely.
It's unbelievable how bad the industry is in a lot of ways. Like, I've been listening to the Alan Moore Master class.
Yeah.
And at one point, he goes, it's kind of writing, right? For anybody who hasn't seen it, it's him talking writing and then getting into kind of the micro different media. And at one point, he's like, okay, you're probably here. I got to talk about comics. And he prefaces it with this idea of like, until it becomes, I forget what word he says, or how he describes it exactly, but my understanding is until you're treated like writers are treated, stay away from comics.
Right.
And I thought, like, we're there. Every single publisher now has a comics line. And yet we still have these publishers that are like sort of the direct market publishers that are like no royalties.
Right.
You know, no ownership. It's bizarre that exists beside 20 publishers that all you retain 100% of your rights. You know, like, we're licensing this this edition.
Yeah, the movie has nothing to do with us. We don't get any VIG from that.
And I mean, like, at this point, the majority of publishers are that. Now it's just this little tiny, like, it's just the previews catalog's worth of publishers that are like, yeah, you guys get nothing. You get $50 a page.
Right.
How do we let that exist? Like,
we get
never worked for them.
Yeah, we get the comics culture that we deserve, and you know, there will never be unions because there will always be scabs. It's a fun job drawing comics, and there will be people who are very happy to do it for $20 a page, and they fuck you over. And
it's weird though, because like now there are never-ending alternatives. You know, self-publishing's never been easier or more financially viable. Real publishers are now paying. You know, they're treating cartoonists like traditional authors. Like, there's just all of this stuff. Make your webcomic and then find a publisher once you've got an audience, and you can do it on your terms. Let them bid against each other for you. Like, there's all this stuff, and yet we still have like a gigantic part of, you know, it's a relatively small percentage of comics when you think of comics as what's going on Earth. But yet it's still, you know, there's a market where that's the dominant model of like, hey, talent,
right,
come in here and work for $7 an hour and then shut up.
Right. Yeah. I think it's Greg Capullo on the Mark Miller interview. It's fanboy shit. Like these guys, they have a feel for characters, and they have a adoration for characters, and that's his thing. He's like, you know, I'll do a self-published thing here or there. Like, I guess maybe he even did. No, I guess maybe that was Brian K. Vaughan that he did shit with. But you know, he's like, listen, I like Batman.
Yeah.
You know, I like Batman, and I think there's so much of that is factors in. Like, there's always going to be talented people who
but at least, you know what, he's getting royalties for it. You know what I mean? It's a little bit better, and he knows what he's doing, and he's looked around and said, I want to do this. But I don't know, man. It's a weird piece that it still is. I feel like there are comic book makers that think that's it. That's the only option. And I don't, like, please don't think that.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad idea to start setting up 45 minutes in advance, Jimmy, and then just, like, settle and try to get our heads straight.
Sure.
And King K-Fabers, we're going to keep our eyes peeled. I'm going to have my phone with me and just put stuff in DMs or on this video's post on the Patreon. And I'll keep my eyes peeled and keep checking stuff out.
I'm sending you a video.
It says canceled.
Canceled? Oh, did you take it on your phone?
If you could send it again, I would rather take it on the iPad.
Sorry to interrupt your thought.
Yeah, I don't even know what I was saying.
Well, just we're wrapping up here. You know, the only other thing that I thought about that may be worth a minute or two conversation is the idea that Image opens up the door for what Image is, right? Like the creator, owner, publisher.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's almost like the CEO that builds the company isn't necessarily the CEO to run the company once it's up and running.
Right.
And I feel like, those guys created Image, but not necessarily with their own tools to benefit the most from it. I mean, they benefit in terms of selling a bunch of stuff and making the majority of the profit from it. But in terms of the creative part, like they were coming out of that other system. So like you almost see like subsequent generations of Image creators, Robert Kirkman, for example, or somebody, Brian K. Vaughan, like these guys that show up and it's like they're almost built for the model that Image, for the platform that Image has invented.
Yeah. Kirkman specifically is a guy to mention in that because he did that. But those other dudes followed the exact model of the founding fathers. They made their bones at a Marvel DC. You trying to iPad?
Yeah, it's saying waiting. I don't know what that means. I just tried Ed Piscor. Only one Ed Piscor came up, so I don't know.
Yeah, it might be on my phone.
I just find all of that stuff really interesting. It's pretty wild that Image is what it is. Like for years, everybody just talked about how they were.
So saying waiting?
Yeah. Maybe I'll try it again. Like so many people were doomsayers of Image in the early days.
Oh yeah, like it's another nickel and dime anniversary. Maybe it's like 30 years or something, and they're putting up all kinds of shit. The fathers, Liefeld and them, and all the other fathers are saying like, remember when they said it wouldn't last 10 months, like things like that.
I don't know why this isn't transferring.
Yeah, maybe restart your phone.
I guess what I'm saying there is I feel like almost think of the thousands or at least hundreds of people that have really benefited from what Image did 30 years ago. And then again, all the people that were naysayers, shut up.
What if we get a piece? What if we benefit from some of that one time?
Seriously.
King K-Fabers. We're gonna dip. We're gonna get set up in the other space, and just make sure everything double, triple check, like an airplane fucking trip across the transatlantic waters. Gonna triple check our redundancies, man, to make sure that we land this baby safe. Keep the questions. We're gonna end the stream now. Thank you so much for supporting the channel at the level you did. Sorry I was a little low energy at the first round, man, but I'm fucking super jazzed at the moment and good to go. So, Jimmy, make that shit the first shit that you edit.
No doubt.
And I will do the same. And you'll see those videos start to materialize later in the day, guys. Wish us luck.
Yeah, man. Have a great weekend, everybody.